Fishing Gurus podcast.
So, Gal, what was the last fish to grace the bank for you then, as we're talking now?
£6, 7 ounce chub off the River Colne.
Very
Just
nice.
Right at the end of the season, yeah.
Oh, did you get a bit of river fishing? I know, listen, I don't want you to talk about the biggie yet.
No.
But did you get a bit of fishing in them very last few days at river season?
I did, yeah. I fished the last 4 days of the season.
Nice, nice.
The Thames was completely out of sorts. It just wasn't fishing.
What, flooded or?
No, it actually dropped back. It looked good, but it just seemed to be dead. Just not a lot coming out. So I just sort of popped down the Colne, within sort of 10, 12 miles of my house. And
nice.
That chub, and had a barbel as well, just over 13. So it was, really nice end to the season.
£13 barbels, 614 chub.
6'7".
6'7".
Yeah.
Right.
Which is biggest I've ever had out of that stretch. So
whereabouts are you actually based, Gal?
I'm down in Buckinghamshire, so I sort of fish round sort of Rickmansworth, Denham area on the Colne. And
nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a good area because I've got access to a lot of rivers. Thames is local.
Is that like big fish country there? Is it a good area for specimen fish?
It's really good area. I mean, you've got everything there. You've got all the famous sort of carp waters that I sort of grew up on, like the Colne Valley, massive Tench and Bream.
Nice.
And then you've got all the river fishing. I mean, Kennet's not far away. You can get to the sort of Great Ouse.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Really good area to live.
Is it Kennet that goes through David Seaman's?
That's it.
bit?
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You're telling me about that. We'll have to get David on a Guru podcast.
Yeah,
soon.
it'd be really good to have on there.
You fished there with him, haven't you?
I fished there a couple of times with him. Yeah, he's great company. Yeah, it's good fun to fish with as well.
Cracking.
Have a good laugh.
I'll tell you what I was going to ask you, because obviously you've got a lot of big fish knowledge. I'm from up north. You're from down south. Do you think that there is less fish, like specimen-sized fish up north? Do you think that's to do with like temperature, that it's colder up there, or?
It's got to be an element of that. Yeah, I mean, you've got some good fishing. I mean, the Barbel fishing up your way on the Trent. I mean, the Trent's probably the best Barbel river in the country now.
Yeah.
For big fish.
Probably is, yeah.
I mean, there's big chub coming through, but I mean, certainly sort of Tench, Bream, some of those species that like sort of warmer conditions, and you tend to catch through the summer months. They definitely don't grow as big though up your way.
No, I noticed that, definitely. You lot down here definitely catch an odd bigger carp. What about carp?
Carp definitely go bigger down south. Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
Temperature or food?
But I think temperature mainly. They're just like longer periods where they're actually feeding.
Right.
Where the water temperature's decent, and yeah.
Interesting. Well, welcome to the Fishing Gurus podcast, mate.
Great to be here.
I've been wanting to do yours for ages, because there's just so much different fishing you do. I'll be doing your heading today, like asking you questions about it all.
I've got to say as well, did you know this is episode number 20?
Get away.
We've done 20 now.
20 podcast.
Gone quick, isn't it?
Yeah. You know what happens on the 20th one?
Go on.
That's the one where the guest buys the Nando's.
Yeah, that's all right.
Afterwards.
Ah.
Perfect.
Oh, I'm busy.
Got to get off early today, lads.
Yeah, got to leave early today.
I think by the end of today, you'll probably have a little ginger tag along on your next trip to Uganda. Probably
Brilliant.
Toby will be coming as well.
I'll be there as well, definitely.
Yeah, so
More than welcome.
I reckon that we'll be coming on some trips
You'd love
for you,
it out
Gal.
there.
I would as well.
You would.
Great to have you on though, mate. I want to kick off by talking about one of the most impressive fish I saw towards the end of fishing season. I'd love to see one in real life. You caught a huge barbel, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I still can't quite believe I actually caught it. It's one of those, it's still sort of sinking in. I mean, it was £20, 2 ounces.
£20.
Yeah, and to get one off the Thames as well. I mean, it's a river I've fished for years.
Right.
And this fish is a joke.
Have you got a picture, Toad? Look at that.
Yes, it was
That's
rather
ridiculous,
large,
isn't
yeah.
it?
No, it was silly size thing. Yeah, I mean, even just seeing it, and I mean, it was so lucky to get it as well.
Do you reckon?
I
Go on,
mean,
tell us about it. How did that trip come about, and what happened when you caught that fish?
I mean, I'd only just come back from a trip overseas. I mean, I'd had probably a good sort of 20 hours or so flying, three flights coming back from Africa. Arrived back the morning before, day at home, jet lagged, then went into the office all day. It was one of those where it's just, I'd been looking at the temperatures, like the forecast, and it was forecast to get warmer that night. It'd been quite cold. The rivers, I knew the river would be up and coloured and really pushing through. But it was just like a small window coming up, and just had a feeling that I had to go fishing, which I've always gone on. when I get a feeling like that, I sort of act on it. And
Bit instinctive almost.
Yeah, I've had quite a few good fish like that before. I mean, I even knew what swim I wanted to go in before I arrived at the river.
How did you know that? How did you? What crossed your mind then?
Because I knew it was going to be up. It's probably going to be rubbish coming through, which really limited swim choice on the Thames. I mean, a lot of it is quite sort of open, and you'd have a lot of flow coming through, a lot of rubbish, almost unfishable. But about 6 weeks before that, I think, it'd be the last time I fished the Thames. There was one spot I'd sort of found a bit out the flow. You could actually keep a bait in the water for long enough to get a bite, and I'd caught 3 barbel that like the night I did on the river, up to just under £10. So I knew I wanted to get back into that swim. I mean, it was about 8 o'clock in the evening when I turned up. I mean,
so it was pitch black when you turned up.
It was pitch black. I drove home.
Wow.
Yeah, drove home from Essex round the M25. Made a bit of bait. Nipped down the river, and luckily the swim was free. There's only a couple of other people on there. Yeah. On the stretch.
Not pre-baited the swim or anything like that for it, or?
No, I mean, I trickled a bit of bait in last time when I left, but that was 6 weeks before, so it's not going to have had any effect on. I mean, it's obviously a big bit of river down there, the Thames. And they move about a fair bit. Although that fish, actually, it doesn't normally get caught where I caught it. It normally gets caught up in a weir pool a bit further upstream.
You know, this amazes me. Like you said, that fish normally get do you know that fish? Is that a recognised barbel that lives in the river?
It is, yes. I mean, it's one I've known about for a few years. I kept meaning to go and have a go and try and catch it because it was getting sort of bigger and bigger, and it's been out over £20, certainly a few occasions.
Fantastic.
Before that. So yeah,
that fries my brain, Tobe. That so. Like, you know, like a massive river, fish could swim for miles one way, miles other way.
Yeah.
Like, you're targeting one fish.
Yeah, I mean, you get certain ones that seem to stay within sort of like a stretch or even an area. I mean, say that gets caught in a weir pool, probably sort of 3 or 4 swims are really popular for it. It does get caught elsewhere, but then you do have other fish that will move. They'll move for miles. You'll just only get one turn up on a stretch, get caught once, and then it'll be gone, and you might hear about it coming out 4 or 5 miles downstream.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How long are you kind of accumulating this information of this stretch? Because I've heard other anglers do it as well. Is it over years or?
It can be. Yeah, I mean, this one. I mean, I knew the fish was. I didn't know much about the stretch. It's actually one I'd fished. I don't know, 15 years before that. The fish weren't as big then. They were. You sort of got the odd double out there, but this particular fish had just got bigger and bigger. And
do you think they're a freak, gal? Like that's just
looks like a carp.
It
looks like a big carp, doesn't
it?
Yeah,
I'd love to see that in real.
I mean,
why does that particular one get to that size? Do you reckon?
I think it must just be genetics. You get it with certain. I mean, you could stock a lake with carp all at the same time, and you always get 1 or 2 that grow for it. I mean, even looking at, small carp, I've had it, and other species. When you get like really baby ones out, you'll get sort of 2 or 3. We've caught them in like pulling in weed, and you've got a load of little carp in the weed. You'll get 2 or 3 of them that are noticeably bigger, even at like 1 year old age, than the rest of them. And I mean, they're the ones the fish farmers normally separate out and grow on.
They're the big ones.
They're the ones that grow big, are the fast growers.
Really interesting.
And genetics, I think, definitely plays a part. You'll get waters where they just sort of keep on doing big fish over sort of many years. Whether it's a bit of food, water quality, that sort of plays a part as well.
And they're just the big greedy ones.
Yeah. And I mean, that one, it's obviously fat, but I mean, it actually looks fatter in the pictures than it was on the bank.
It must have been thick.
It's thick.
Have you got any pictures from like looking above it at
I don't think I did, no, because I was on my own. I wanted to get it back as well, because I don't like it, but especially barbel. I just got some self-takes. I set the tripod up, self-takes, and got it back.
Tell us about, it's obviously dark. You didn't get there till 8 o'clock. What time did you catch it, and what happened? Like, because it's a big flooded river, pitch black, and you've hooked this fish, which is an absolute fish of a lifetime. Talk me through like the setting your traps and getting the bite.
Yeah, I mean, that one, the swim I was in, I was only fishing 1 rod. The previous session I'd done in that swim, I'd hooked 3 fish, and all 3 had snagged me up on something on the margin shelf.
Oh, no.
They'd all come out after a little bit of messing about, and I was just worried having a second rod out. I tried it the previous session. I hadn't had any bites on the rod fishing downstream. All the bites come up when a rod just sort of flicked 3 or 4 rod lengths out.
Not
sort
far
of,
out.
No, just upstream, just over the margin shelf, pretty much over the drop off. There's a little bit of a slacker area there, a little bit of an eddy, which they seem to be in. And I think having a second rod sometimes, you rather than increasing your chances, you're actually cutting down your chances. If you hook something,
goes through your other rod.
It goes through the other line, and with a snag in the swim, you're probably going to lose it.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So I just fished one rod, cast it out. I mean, after about an hour, sort of wound it in to check it, because obviously with rubbish coming down, there was no rubbish on the line at all, I remember, on that one.
Bit of a confidence boost then.
Definitely. I mean, the water temperature, I think it was something like 45.2 when I arrived there. I'll take a digital thermometer. It's one of those where if I'm fishing, I'm going fishing anyway, but it's nice to know. And it was actually starting to go up slightly, the water temperature.
Do you think that's a plus for getting
it's
bites?
Massive, yeah,
really?
Massive advantage. Yeah, for barbel in the winter. Even sort of small temperature changes can make a big difference. I mean, if the water temperature say like 50 degrees and it's been constant around that for sort of a week or two, I think they've already fed sometimes and they're not really up for feeding. If it's been like 43, 44 and starts rising, it might only have to go up a degree, sort of to 45, but it just seems to turn them on.
That's
and
amazing.
Then they feed, yeah.
Even in match fishing though, now you've said that, you see it in winter, it's always that 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun's been up, and it might not be up at that point, but it's been up all day, and I bet that's when the temperature is at its peak.
It's just that little rise. It's just enough to trigger them.
Yeah, you get a few bites, you get a few. Yeah.
I mean, you get it as well sometimes with barbel when it first starts cooling down after a warm spell. It's almost like they know the weather's changing, and they have one last feed. I mean, I've had nights where it's been like frosty and freezing cold, but it's been warm right up until then, and you get like one last sort of go at it.
As if they're like, right, lads, let's stock up for winter before it...
They know they've got maybe a week or two of rubbish weather coming in, cold conditions, and they're not really going to feed. So, you do seem to get that. But, with that, I mean, it was just perfect. I mean, say with no rubbish on the line, put the rod back out and just decide... I mean, I don't like casting more than I need to. I was using boilie on the hook, so I knew it was going to stay on. No problem like fishing paste or whatever. And about 1 a.m, I suppose that was, it sort of went off. I mean, I'm fishing buzzers and that on there because I fish all night, so I need to get some sleep sometime. Sort of working the next day as well. So I have to get some sleep at some time. It went off. I mean, as soon as I hooked into it, I could feel the line going through the snag.
Oh God!
I didn't know what size the fish was at the time. I knew it was something decent, but couldn't really tell. And sort of took the bail arm off, let it take some line, sort of connected again, pulled it back, and it sort of came back to the same snag. And as you do, gave it some more line. Tried walking up and down the bank a bit, but couldn't do a lot with that because of the way the trees were. And eventually just pinged off. And
what, like totally free?
Totally free.
That was a bit of relief, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I thought it was going to happen eventually, but it's still one of those. You're starting to think after 4 or 5 times trying to get it out. You're thinking,
how long were you snagged up for? Do you know?
Probably 5. Mate, I don't know, anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes.
Yeah, it seems forever, doesn't it?
It seems forever at the time. It's probably it must have been getting on for 5 minutes because I was letting it take a bit of line off, and there were times it wasn't moving much for a while, and then sort of went off. And I mean, when it did come free, I mean, it started coming up towards the surface, and it felt really heavy, and I was thinking, well, that's must have been a branch or something, and the branches come free and
must have hooked half a tree.
Yeah, I was expecting a big branch or something to come up out the water with the barbel behind it.
Yeah,
and then it surfaced, and it was just the barbel. And you're sort of thinking, that's heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, the river was chocolate coloured, so couldn't really see. You could see it was a big fish, but you couldn't see how big.
So at this point, you've seen it. It's big. It feels heavy. Did you think that could be that particular fish?
At that point, I wasn't thinking that, to be honest. Just because, I mean, there's some other good fish in there. I mean, it's done other fish to around 17, 18 pound, and it's got a reasonable proportion of doubles in there. If you get one, you got a reasonable chance of a double normally. Yeah, if you do catch a fish. So. So you could see it was big. It went off again for about another 3 or 4 minutes, sort of downstream a bit, come back, and it was only when it was sort of coming up to the net, it was almost like beaten, and it sort of turned over on its side, and even with the colour, of the water, sort of got a glimpse of the flank, and then it sort of came head on over the net cord, and you could actually see the width of it as well. And I mean, to be honest, as soon as it went in the net and I saw it go properly over the cord, I pretty much knew what fish it was.
Wow. And how did that feel? What did you think then?
I was jumping about on the bank. Yeah,
Were you really?
Anyone coming down would have thought I was crazy. It's like leaping about the bank, and
Middle at night.
middle of the night, pitch black, and dancing around the bank. Yeah,
Brilliant. Can you get on the table and give us a demo of the dance you did? Is
probably
that
best not.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
I'd love to have seen that.
Yeah,
I
it's
really
just like
would.
a proper buzz, especially when you're on your own. I mean, it's great fishing with mates sometimes, but sometimes it's just you and the fish. It's that,
Yeah, you're on the bank. It's at
Yeah.
night. Special fish.
yeah.
Great atmosphere.
And then obviously, sort of, when I lifted it out, I mean, that sort of confirmed it had to be that fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good hook hold. Did you have a good hook hold?
It was absolutely nailed. Yeah, it was
Never
never
coming
coming off, but you don't know that at the time.
No.
Yeah, I mean, those hooks are so good for them.
What did you get him on, Gal?
That was on a size 8 mixer hook. Carp,
Right,
one
right.
of our floater fishing hooks, called
Wow.
the floater fishing hooks, but they're so good because they're.
Do you use them for barbel fishing a lot?
I use them a lot for barbel and chub. They're really sharp, slightly in turn points. They don't blunt easily. I mean,
Got
some.
ya. Like
Especially when you've got
on
rubbish
gravel.
coming down and it sort of rolls around a bit. Yeah, some hook points I prefer a slightly in turn point for that. So
I'll have a go with them on Trent.
Really worth doing. Yeah, and they're strong as well.
Well, £20 2-ounce barbel on, hanging on in a flooded Thames.
Exactly.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
mate. What a fish. Really well done for that. I was so chuffed when I
cheers.
saw it. Absolutely amazing. Frightening fish.
I've probably struggled to beat that one, I think. Yeah.
Do you reckon? Well, I was just going to
reckon
say
so.
to you, where does that rank? You've got a broad knowledge of big fish. Where does that rank in terms of fish in the UK? How many of them are kicking about in our rivers, do you think? I know there's no solid answer, but
I mean, I think it's in probably the top 20, 25 barbel captures on weight, but obviously quite a few of those are repeats of the same fish. I mean, I imagine that fish will be in there a few times.
right.
I think that's £20.10. I think that's been up to sort of top weight that one's done.
Phenomenal.
Always at the back end of the season. If I'd call it a few weeks before, it'd probably been 19 something. It always seems to put weight on that fish at the end. You've probably got at least 2 other 20s in the Thames though,
Have you really?
except in different stretches.
Do you think there's any 20s in Trent where I live?
It wouldn't surprise. I don't know what the Trent record is. It's certainly done like 18s, isn't
And I think some people
18s,
catch big uns
19s.
and don't publicise
it?
it
You'll
as
get
well.
a lot of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
How often does that go off, Gal? Because I'm not oblivious to, but I'm not involved in that big fish world as much as you are. How much do people catch, say, fish like that one you've caught and not tell anyone?
You'll definitely get fish like that. I mean, there's people that. I mean, obviously, some people publicise them. You've got social media now, but there are people out there that will just go fishing. They won't. They might tell a couple of mates, or maybe not even tell anyone, and catch big fish and keep them quiet. I mean, some of the couple of the Sussex rivers, you've got the Rother and the Arun. I mean, they've got. I mean, the British records from the Arun,
Right.
current record.
Is that little tidal river?
It's tidal, yeah. It's it's rock hard. I mean, it's if you get like a couple of fish in a season, you've done well out of those sort of rivers.
That is too hard. That's too hard for us, Tobe, innit?
Yeah.
2
Well,
fish
we
in a
never-
season.
It's certainly not like the Trent is.
No.
Or the Wye. No, it's very different.
Right.
Yeah. But I think they probably keep fish quiet on some of those rivers. But most big fish, I'd say not just barbel, but most species, unless you get lucky and find a water that's not been fished before, or they've been like completely neglected, sort of like, I don't know, big rudd in a carp water or something like that, the chances are that anything that's big is going to have been caught as it's been getting bigger and will be sort of known to some degree. Yeah.
Someone at some point will have caught it, got a picture, talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely, yeah.
Really cool. It's such a different world to like our sport. It's really
I
interesting.
suppose that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, I've done a bit of barbel fishing myself this year, so I'm.
Oh, you catch some nice ones up there.
Yeah. Not £20,
No,
but
but
so
still some good-
interested.
yeah.
I'm still waiting for my invitation to the Trent.
Yeah,
I'm
whenever
still
you
waiting
want.
for mine, actually.
Yeah, it's
I tell you
funny
what,
that,
I'll do
isn't
you a
it?
deal. You take me to this spot where this £20 2-ouncer is, and I'll take you on Trent. Is that all right?
Sounds good, yeah. It might not be in that spot, though, when I take you there, but...
You've got quite a bit of experience with big barbel, Gal. I know you had a big stint on fishing the Great Ouse when that was the
that was
pinnacle
sort
of barbel fishing. What and you've got a really cool story I know about a big fish that you came close to potentially catching, and tell me a bit about Great Ouse and fishing on there.
I mean, that stretch at Adams Mill, I mean, it did it did three consecutive British records, I think it was. 3 different fish, which again shows the genetics of those fish like we were talking about coming through. I think you had a fish called Red Belly, then there was one they called the Pope, and then the Traveller.
I remember the Traveller. I remember reading about that as a kid. Yeah,
that got caught. Yeah, and I think anyway, it certainly did 2 different ones over £20. But there was only probably, when the Traveller was in there at record weight, there's probably only 35 barbel in that stretch of river.
And how big's this stretch that you're talking about?
It's a few miles long, because you had Adams Mill, then you had Kickle's Farm below it, which the fish used to move backwards and forwards between the 2 stretches.
Got you.
They spent most of the time up on Adams Mill, but occasionally dropped down onto Kickle's Farm. And I mean, so you could find them quite easily, as long as it wasn't in flood. It was clear water. You could see them, but it was catching them was the problem there.
Only a little river then.
It's tiny little river. I mean, the first time someone ever took me there to have a look at it, I walked straight across the bridge over it. I mean, it was where the car park was. There was a bridge next to it. I walked straight across the bridge and carried on going, looking for I'd walked across the side stream and I was looking for the actual river we were going to be fishing.
And that was the river.
That was the river, yeah. Yeah, it's very small.
Wow.
Yeah, again, I've been more used to fishing like the Severn and Thames and rivers like that. So it's,
bit different.
Very different.
And what did you ever catch a big one out of the Great Ouse?
I've had some good fish out. I mean, I had them up to £15 9 ounces out there was my best.
Still a massive barbel.
Yeah, but I did come close a couple of occasions to, the Traveller itself. That one. Yeah, that was 15.9.
Tell you what, you're looking young there, guys.
I was looking young, yeah.
How old were
A
you there?
few years ago. I was probably sort of late 20s at the time, I reckon. Yeah.
Quite an handsome chap, isn't he, Toe?
Yeah, looked a lot younger then.
Got all women's knickers round him as well. They must have been throwing the knickers at you while you got holding that barbel. How big's that one?
£15 9 ounces.
That was
the best one I had out the Ouse. Yeah, I mean, they were really nice looking fish in there as well. Because it's so clear, the colours on them were good as well.
Stunning.
Yeah, wicked
picture,
looking
that,
fish.
And you say you came close to catching bigger. What do you mean by that?
I mean, that record fish came out at £21 2 ounces. Record weight, guy called Graham King called it. I'd actually been in that swim the previous afternoon.
That's a close call, isn't it?
I've seen them in. I mean, whether I'd have caught that one or not, don't know. I mean, there was half a dozen fish, maybe more, in that particular spot in one swim. Fish room, didn't catch anything. It was day fishing only on there. Every morning you had a draw for swims, depending on how many turned up in the car park. And went back the next day, came second in the draw. Graham came out number 1 and went in there, and about 2 hours later, sort of got a call, like, come and photograph. Yeah, and it was that fish. So
£21.
21.2, yeah.
That's scarily big for a barbel.
Oh, it was huge thing, yeah.
So you saw it, you took pictures.
Yeah, because I was with Anglers Mao at the time, so sort of took the shots for them.
Were you gutted, Gal? Like, did you think, oh my, I could have caught that yesterday? Or
it's one of those you sort of, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. I say there was other fish in the swim. There's no guarantee that if you got a bite off or something, you could easily have hooked one of the other fish in there and spooked the rest. And
right.
You just need a bit of luck sometimes. And I mean, I actually came probably even closer to it before that. It wouldn't have been record size because it was sort of late summer. I'd seen it on its own, managed to get it feeding, managed to get a rig in. I still remember watching it like right over the top of my bait.
That exact fish.
That fish. It was quite identifiable, the size of it as well, and compared to everything else, and with the water being so clear. And had a bite, and from don't know where it ever came from. I had a chub on.
No,
I hadn't even seen the chub.
Oh, that was the most disappointing chub.
It was, yeah. Like sort of, I remember striking the barbel. The Traveller's sort of gone off, and it's like, well, the line's not. What's going on? I'm attached to something, but it's not attached to that, and sort of chub about 4 or 5 pound on the end. And
that makes me feel sick just hearing that story.
Yeah, it just shows you that.
Yeah.
Where it had appeared from, I don't know. Yeah,
And that's the traveller. That's that fish.
yeah, that fish. Yeah.
Wow. That's unreal.
Mm.
That's done with that story. That makes you. Doesn't it make you feel like? Oh God.
yeah. It's-
Frightening. I know before we got onto the Great Ouse Barbel, you said when you caught your big un,
Yep.
it was after a ridiculously long flight and trip to Uganda.
Yep.
What were you doing over there in Uganda?
I was fishing for the Nile perch. I've just done sort of 20 days out there at Murchison
What a
Falls.
place to go fishing.
Uganda,
it's-
Nile
Yeah,
Perch.
as you do.
It's absolutely mental out there.
Yeah.
It's not just the fish, the actual place
I was
itself.
going to say, what's it like as a country?
It's fairly modern now. It's sort of
All
more
right.
modern than I expected. Yeah.
They got McDonald's and stuff.
Yeah, they've got all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you will have. More in the cities. I mean, once you get out into the countryside, it is still very sort of, quite sort of primitive in some ways. Yeah. You've sort of like villages, people living in sort of mud huts, along like farming, and so it's
Wow.
But the people out there are brilliant, like really friendly. Everyone you meet, sort of friendly.
Yeah. There are a lot of anglers. Is fishing a big thing? Is fishing for Nile Perch a big thing?
It's not. No, I mean a lot of these countries. A lot of countries I travel to, certainly in Asia and Africa. A lot of people fish, but they're doing it for food. They've not got the money or the luxury of being able to sort of go off and just do it for sport. If they go out and they try and catch some fish, it's to feed their family, or
Got you.
so they're doing it with nets, or
Just throwing that up as well. That's how I imagined it to look.
yeah.
You
with
take
the-
that photo, Gal.
Yes, yeah. That's
That
just
is
from,
stunning.
That's a wicked picture.
Yeah, it was like that most mornings. I mean, it's brilliant. You sort of, I mean, staying in like there's sort of lodges alongside the river. Staying in one of those, you'd get up in the morning, jump in the boat,
Look at that
just
sun.
before the sun was coming up, and that was like a
That's
normal.
mad. I've never seen the sun like that.
That was like a normal view.
Is that how the sun looked? That colour?
Yeah, it was.
How
It must
come it's
be.
pink?
It must
Is
be.
Is
where
it pink or am I colourblind?
No, it's like like a pinky
must
orange.
be where it's
isn't it?
coming through the sort
Yeah.
of cloud and haze. I mean, you can see there's quite a lot of haze in the picture, and it's
That's beautiful, isn't it?
Mad. Isn't
yeah. I mean, the sunsets as well you got there were
What river's that?
spectacular. That's the Nile. It's part of it's the Victoria and Albert Nile. So it's I mean, it comes all the way down from you got Lake Victoria. I mean, it's the same Nile you get that flows through Egypt, like a few thousand miles to the north of that. So it's
That's great.
it's a huge river.
And how did the trip to Uganda and wanting to catch Nile Perch, how did that come about?
There's something I've always wanted to catch. I mean, I missed out when they were catching them in Egypt on Lake Nasser. I was doing other trips then. I was going off to India, fishing for other species. And then sort of Nasser came to an end. A lot of the big fish sort of died out through commercial fishing and sort of being taken out. And sort of mainly small ones. And there's very few places left now where you can actually go and catch big Nile perch. I mean, Murchison Falls at Uganda, it's national park. They are protected within the park, although they move up and down the river as soon as they're outside the national park sort of area. There's sort of nets, and so they are still under threat to some extent.
Yeah.
But it's done fish to I think 116 kilos, something like that.
That's a big perch. Isn't it, that?
That's like 250 something pounds.
Don't get them in Chesterfield Canal.
No, definitely not. No. No, you wouldn't fit that in your keep.
No, you
would
wouldn't, would
No,
you?
no, you'd struggle a bit.
You'd be shocked if that come up on your lobworm rig, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would.
Talk about
Christ.
something being shocked to come up and fishing, Gal. When people have got pictures as mega as Gary, they tend to throw them up.
Yeah, go on, get them on.
This
get
might
up.
be the most mental thing you'd ever see.
Oh yeah, no,
Is that Pike?
yeah.
Is that what Pike looked like on the
definitely
Nile?
we get bitten by that. Yeah,
Wow.
What's going on there, Gal?
yeah. No crocodiles. I mean,
They're just walking, they're in and out the river, just...
yeah, I mean that one's heard us cut. I mean they're actually quite wary of you when you come anywhere near them in the boat. I mean that had been sort of sunbathing up on the sandbank there. As soon as it heard us coming, they sort of came down.
How far away were you from when you took that shot?
It's probably about 20 metres
Oh,
away.
no.
I'd be gone.
Yeah, not
I'd be
far
gone.
enough
I
is
wouldn't be
what I was
20
gonna
metres
say.
away from that.
Yeah, on a boat. So
Yeah, it's not a zoom lens, that.
You're safe. They're not going to come and eat you.
they're not gonna. No, the boats you're in are quite big, so
Right.
they're not, but you've got to be careful. You wouldn't want to get in the water there.
Right.
Like, if you've got a big fish, you don't go getting. You don't go getting in the margins with them or anything like that.
Stay in the boat.
You stay in the boat, yeah.
How big's that? Like, how many meters long?
I don't know, it's sort of probably 12, 14 foot long, that
My
one. So
God.
What is it, Gal? Because some people will be listening and not watching.
it's a Nile crocodile, that one. So it's
A Nile crocodile, folks,
Yeah, I mean,
on
they
screen.
I don't know what they go up to, about 18 foot, I think. Yeah.
You can see its teeth, and it's bright green. It literally, if you drew a crocodile, that is what it'd look like.
Yeah. And they're pretty, yeah.
Massive,
Beautiful
isn't it?
colours, ain't it? Like
Yeah,
all them
they are.
greens on it and that.
I mean, they're quite aggressive as well. They can be, yeah.
Got you.
I mean, some crocodiles will sort of go away from people. I mean, it's like you get alligators in the States. The number of attacks from alligators are pretty low, whereas Nile crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles as well are sort of known for taking people. So, yeah, you do it. Yeah, definitely makes you think when you're putting a fish back.
Yeah,
I mean,
keep your hand
anything,
out at water.
well, anything you catch, you take them out into the middle of the river to release them. I mean, you can imagine fish splashing about while you're landing it. All that noise is going to potentially attract a crocodile in. Anyway.
It's a right consideration, innit?
Yeah.
Right, lads, we're going fishing, we're going up Nile. Let's just have a think about what could potentially come and eat us as we release this fish.
Yeah.
But that is basically what you're saying you have to do.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I mean that one we actually felt. I mean
Is that your picture, Gal, that you've
Yeah,
took?
that is. Yeah,
That's
Like David Bailey, innit?
he is, isn't he?
that had been dead. I mean, you from the smell of that perch, it had been dead probably 4 or 5 days. I mean, I think it died probably just naturally, and
that's a Nile perch.
that's a Nile perch. That was probably about 65 kilos, we reckon, that
Wow.
perch. And again, the
Croc's
crocodile.
just had it.
The crocodile trying to eat it. It must have been hungry, that one. I mean, normally I say you get close to the crocodiles and they'll go away. They don't let you get near them. Trying to get photographs is difficult, but that one, it wouldn't let go of the perch.
For them people that are listening and not watching, there's a crocodile's head out of the water and it fills the screen and it's got a huge Nile perch. Make sure if you're driving and listening to this, log back in and have a watch of it.
If you're listening, just go and watch it.
The pictures are amazing.
I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, I was taking pictures of that for about 20 minutes in the end. I mean, at one point we'd actually we're drifting down with it as it was going downstream, and the perch ended up touching the front of the boat where I stood.
And that crocodile's got hold of it.
It still had hold of it. Yeah, I got shots looking down on the
the
crocodile. Yeah, I mean, it had its mouth full of Nile perch. It
Yeah.
wasn't going to attack me, but yeah, I was sort of like on a wide angle lens.
What an amazing experience.
Yeah. Oh, you've probably I was going to say
You got the
might have
picture?
it.
Is it that one?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
yeah.
look at his eyes looking at you.
I mean, that perch is against the side of the boat pretty much at the time.
Gally's looking at you.
He is.
Innit?
Yeah.
He's
I was
looking down the
at me,
lens.
definitely, yeah.
Tell you what, he needs a bit of whitening going on them gnashes though, doesn't
It
he?
does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Can you imagine, right, being in the margin and you just take
No.
a look over your left shoulder and just see that?
No. I've just got Peter Pan in my head. It was Peter Pan with
it was
Captain
Peter
Hook.
Pan, wasn't it? With a
Yeah.
crocodile with a clock in it or something.
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
it. Yeah,
I've got
ticking
that
away.
in my head when I see that.
Yeah. It makes you careful when you see them like that. Yeah, definitely.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
I can
definitely
imagine.
Makes you think about it.
Tell me a little bit more about Nile perch, Gal. How did the trip go? Did you catch any? What were your target?
The trip was actually really slow, fishing wise. I caught a few, but small ones, up to just over 40 pounds. I caught one just over 40 on the first day, and that was the biggest I had in 20 days fishing. They just
Unreal.
They just weren't. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. They just weren't really feeding.
Beautiful fish, though, aren't they? Them?
Looks prehistoric. doesn't
They're
it? Like,
wicked looking fish.
wow.
Yeah. I mean, the river they had really bad flooding there a couple of years ago, and it's sort of been gradually dropping back down the levels, but it's still, I mean, a lot of those bits that you can see in the background there, they'd be out of the water normally.
Right.
And it's one of those things, you go halfway around the world, you're planning trips months in advance sometimes. I mean, it's bad enough in your local river trying to plan around weather conditions and when they're feeding. So
trying to do it somewhere other side of the globe is...
You just sort of take it as it is. I mean, sometimes you get good trips and you get really lucky and you're there when it's sort of, well, it couldn't be better condition-wise. Other times you go, I mean, I've travelled, eastern Russia. I mean, I got there and the river was about 50 miles wide. On a taimen, fishing for taimen, like a big trout.
That's crazy.
Huge trout they get there.
So it's just a matter of luck, really.
Yeah, I mean, we fished because we were there, but we knew we were completely wasting our time. Like chocolate-coloured water, lure fishing.
You're not going to catch much.
But even trying to find the tributaries where they normally live, they were all just part of. I mean, it's sort of tundra and quite sort of flat around the river, and it was just as far as you could see was water.
Right.
Going
right.
off towards China, at the border with China.
That must be frustrating, Gal, because obviously they're not cheap, these trips. They take
No.
so much planning. So when you do get there and it's failed like that, what the hell can you do?
You've just got to make the most of it. I mean, a lot of the places you're going to, they're pretty spectacular places. I mean, like Uganda, I love my wildlife photography as well. And I mean, the trip was worth it just for that. Just some of the photos I got and sort of things I saw wildlife wise.
It's another one. Sorry, Gav.
That's
Your
all right.
pictures just been mind blowing.
Yeah, with the hippos, yes.
Look at
yeah,
that.
there are loads of them in the river.
Looks like it's got scars on its back.
Oh,
that Gal.
they will have, yeah.
They're
I mean,
proper
they fight.
violent animals, aren't they?
They are. They're
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Don't they kill more humans than lions or something daft
Definitely,
like that?
yeah. They're really dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because they're in the water underneath. You can't see them.
Yeah, you do get that. I mean, they'll smash boats up if you get locals in a wooden boat.
Wow.
They'll attack the boats.
I mean, look
and
at the
smash
teeth
them up.
on it.
Yeah, I mean, those teeth are ridiculous.
Do they eat people?
They have done, yeah. I mean, you read some of the old stuff when they're exploring, like from sort of like 18th, 19th century. I mean, they used to bite boats in half.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that? Tell me if I'm being a bit naive. Is that quite a small one? That looks quite small.
it's actually a fair size. It's because you've got nothing to sort of really scale it against.
Yeah.
It's always difficult, but they are. Yeah, I mean,
Say that's probably still the size of a small car. That,
yeah, you
isn't
wouldn't
it?
want to get hit by
Yeah.
it.
No, you won't.
But where you're fishing there, because there's quite a lot of tourism, they're a bit more used to people. But you get other rivers where they're not, and they'll attack boats.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
Really scary. I
I
wouldn't
mean,
like to be there when that's
The
happening.
river's sort of like full of them.
Look at this one. This one says hippo yawning wide. What a picture,
Mate,
Gal.
look, that's
Look
the
at
kind of
Yeah, I mean, you see the size of the teeth and everything on them there, and
That's like our lass in the morning when she's getting up.
I hope she ain't watching this. You're going to look like you've been attacked by a hippo.
Wow. Oh. You can just imagine it. Going, oh. Do they make a noise, Gal?
They do, yeah. They sort of make a sort of, it's weird. It's almost like a honking sort of noise.
Like, "Rah."
Yeah, like the throat sort of going. Yeah, it's really deep sort of, yeah, it vibrates, all echoes.
Is it more
all
like
around.
this?
You're getting that, yeah. Take me back to Uganda. I'm in Uganda.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, normally as the sunset, they start, cooling. I mean, I think it's just like worn off other males. It's mainly the males that yawn, and yeah, you'll get them all start yawning sort of as the sun starts going down.
Already, though, I know we've only talked about Uganda, and we're going to talk about other places. Doesn't it make you feel like the fishing we do, Toby, is quite one-dimensional when you look at these pictures and see how much other stuff there is to do?
That perch, I've never seen. That blew my mind a little
Yeah.
bit.
What do you catch them on, Gal? The Nile perch?
Mainly on live baits.
Right.
I mean, you catch them on dead baits as well. They lure fish for them. But yeah, I mean, I was sort of live baiting.
What are you using as a live bait? Just out of curiosity.
We're catching tilapia. We're good. Sort of any. There's a fish called an awaka which eats seeds. It's like a silverfish.
Yeah.
Like almost sort of like a roachy, carpy looking thing, quite long. Yeah, they're quite good baits.
And do you fish them on a float?
You can fish them on the float in some stretches. Other bits you're just using like a really small lead, just dropping baits, sort of running into the side anywhere where you can sort of stop the boat. So you're sort of fishing downstream. They just sort of bounce around in the flow, and it's just sort of trying to identify areas where the perch are actually going to be sitting.
And I bet it's exciting when you get a bite in it.
It is, yeah. I mean,
What's the fight like?
It's actually pretty good. They're not the hardest fighting fish I've ever caught, but
Yeah.
you know when you've hooked a big one. I mean, the weight, and they will go like steaming off downstream. They normally head straight out into the flow and into the deeper
Wonderful.
water.
Yeah. Are they similar? Because obviously, like when you hook a big perch in like England, they're known for like that vigorous head shake when you
still
first...
get that. You
Yes.
still get that head shaking. You can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, you got catfish in the river as well. There, they go quite big, up to like sort of £50, £60. I mean, £40 a big one for the catfish, the semitundu catfish they get there, but the fight's just totally different from those. It's a lot more sort of deeper, whereas the perch you get those head shakes. They jump as well.
That must be cool, seeing a Nile perch jump out of water.
Yeah, I mean,
I can remember John Wilson fishing for him. I'm sure he had one jump on
yeah,
his
he
show.
fished there.
Yeah.
Jeremy Wade as well. He
Yeah?
did a show at Murchison Falls.
Right,
I think there's shots of him. I think he stood at the top of the falls, and then there's shots of him fishing off the rocks at the bottom of the falls. I mean, unfortunately, with the water level, all of that area was pretty much unfishable when I was there. It's like the rocks you fish off were completely underwater. And it's just, there's just nowhere that was any slack water. It's just like a raging torrent coming through.
What numbers of fish did you catch? How many did you catch when you were out there?
I've probably had, I don't know, maybe sort of 15, 20 perch, but a lot of sort of smaller ones. A lot of what you're catching was sort of like less than 10 kilos, and a few others sort of around the sort of 30, 35 pound mark. And I really want to ask you, I'm itching to ask, I hope this doesn't sound like a daft question. What would happen, right, if I went to that venue there and set my seat box up on the side of it and fished like stick float with maggots? Would you catch out?
You get eaten by a hippo.
I was going to say, you might not last to the end of the day.
Honestly.
Yeah, possibly.
It'd be a good experiment, though, wouldn't it?
It would. Just
film
We
it.
might need a new guru host after that.
Send someone on a recce trip first
Should we
and
send
see if
Rimmer?
they come back. Yeah,
Let's
see
send
if he
Rimmer.
comes back. And
Yeah.
if he does, you know it's all right. Yeah.
But would you catch any, like...
You would. Oh, definitely. You'd catch other stuff, yeah.
So there is some smaller...
Yeah,
fish
that's
in there
quite
and-
local. I mean, the fishing, you've got a guide out there, obviously, because you need someone who knows the river. It's dangerous otherwise with all the currents, rocks and everything else who drives the boat. They're normally really good with the bait fishing side of things. Although they don't necessarily fish for Nile perch themselves and haven't done it in the past, they've sort of grown up catching fish to eat. So
Got you.
they'll know where the tilapia are or... sometimes it all looks, you've got a bit of bank like miles of it all looks the same, and they'll go, we're stopping this spot, and sure enough you're sort of catching fish one after the other.
So the watercraft comes into it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, with those other fish I mentioned, like the silvery colour ones with scouted, like a whacker, they eat seeds, and quite often my guide, he was looking for monkeys in the trees, because where they're leaping about, they just lodge the seeds which fall down, and then obviously...
How
Yeah,
cool
whacker
is
coming
that?
in, yeah.
Look for the monkeys, lads, and fish will be underneath them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or if it's
unreal.
windy, you'll catch them a bit more because the seeds are falling down. Yeah, falling
Yes,
out the
they're
trees
feeding.
more.
I
Yeah,
suppose it's like a hatch, isn't it? If you're fishing for grayling and there's a hatch on, they're feeding on the surface. And,
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What's of people listening to this, Gal? Some great stories. I'm sure a lot of them are thinking it, because I am. How accessible is it for people to go and do it? Because it sounds amazing, it looks amazing. Could I go and do that if I wanted to?
Yeah, it's companies that do, yeah. I mean, there's guiding companies out there. I mean, the guy I know who runs all the fishing out there. I mean, he's been in Uganda for about 35 years. Yeah, Wild Frontiers Uganda. They do all sorts of stuff like safaris and other stuff, and it's all pretty much arranged for you. I mean, it's probably one of the most organised places I've been to. Some of my overseas trips are very much sort of rough and ready, and you're sort of organising it as you go. Whereas, and I mean, on the river, there's lodges there. Some of them quite upmarket as well. Boats are there, so everything's pretty accessible. I mean, they're not necessarily the cheapest trips to do. I mean, that's always a problem with some of that sort of fishing.
Yeah.
But you could go there easy enough.
Could go and have a go.
Yeah.
Save up.
Yeah, you could
really
book
wanted
it,
to
jump
do
on
it.
a plane, and pretty much everything from getting to the airport to when you go back home is all sort of sorted out for you. So it's
Fantastic.
It's pretty easy.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. I say even the roads out there, it's sort of 5-6 hour drive from Entebbe, where you fly into, sort of the big city. It is accessible compared to
Some of the
other
well, we're going to have a
sort of-
chat about
yeah.
some of them anyway, aren't we? A bit
definitely,
later
yeah.
on. What are you doing next week, Tobe? Should we get it booked?
Yeah, let's
Let's go.
Wait,
We'll
as
bring
well.
a few
Yeah.
back and put them in local canal.
They do
See
it.
how they
Imagine.
see how they get on.
Give people a shot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would and all.
Local winter league or whatever. Yeah.
Matt's had a Nile perch.
Well,
Weigh that in.
I'm not letting you move on before I show this one, because we
Go on.
seem to have gone past it. But Gal, what was the size of that one?
Oh, that was from first trip I did out there, which is
That's
year
big.
before.
I just wasn't letting it go. You got here, was it 90?
98.5 pound that one. Yeah, I mean I took scales and waist sling and everything with me, but that's
Look at the
that's
size of that.
sort of biggest one. And I mean that jumped clean out the water at one point during the fight. Most of it come out, sort of shaking its head and
That is one hell. That's a perch.
Mm.
They're not that dissimilar to a perch, are they? Like
No.
spiky fin on the back and then a little dorsal
I mean,
fin a bit further
yeah,
back.
the actual look of them is just like a scaled up version of a perch, obviously without the stripes.
Yeah.
And
I bet they've got a
colour,
huge
but-
mouth, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean the mouth on them is very similar again to our perch. When they open the mouth, it's you got that very similar sort of to look and the way they feed, sort of inhaling sort of baits from. I mean, like perch in this country, they'll take a live bait or a crayfish, almost inhale it. They're the same.
Like suck it in and blow the water back through the gills.
Yeah.
And... What a fish. I'd love to have a go. I feel so closed-minded and insignificant, the kind of fishing
that'd
I
be
do
so
when I
cool.
see that.
Oh, it's something I'm definitely going back to. It's,
You're gonna go and catch perch at the weekend now, a little tiny one like that, and just feel really. Oh,
Yeah, what is
great.
that?
Yeah, what is,
What is
quite
that?
the same.
You talk about how these fish, sometimes some certain parts of it, they're endangered, Gal.
Yeah.
And I know that when we went away to Scotland on a recent trip, you were telling me about Mahseer and how they're sort of similar. Now, that's a fish I really want to ask you about, because that's probably the most vivid memory of the John Wilson films.
Yeah.
I can remember, I'm sure it were India,
Yep.
when he stood on a rock and
Yes.
he's got this big wide shot on screen fishing, and then he hooks this fish and they jump in a little wicker basket thing
Yeah.
and get dragged back downstream back, and that were Mahseer fishing, if I remember.
It was. I mean, that was one of that'd have been the old Go Fishing show.
That's
he
it.
did. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the sort of shows watching that as a kid that got me into wanting to catch a Mahseer.
Really, that particular one?
That particular episode. And there was another one with a guy called Paul Boot and John Bailey, Casting for Gold, which was filmed up in the north of India. And that, seeing that was on TV. I can't remember, Channel 4 or something. And also a couple of the sort of old books as well. Sort of reading. I used to read loads of books when I was a kid, sort of get stuff out the library, and it was Somewhere Down the Crazy River, which was Paul Boot and Jeremy Wade wrote. I think that was sort of like late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
I'd have
See,
written that
I
one.
thought Jeremy Wade had only really come into the forefront recently because of river monsters and stuff, but he were actually about in the 80s.
He was one of like the early sort of pioneers, him and Paul Boot.
Right, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
No, he did a show called Jungle Hooks before that. I think that's what got him into the TV side of things. I can't remember, it was on Discovery or one of the other channels.
Fishing for them foreign fish.
Yeah, he did sort of 3 parts in South America, fishing for arapaima, and then he did 3 parts up in India, fishing for sort of goonch, catfish, and Mahseer. So.
And that were quite an influence for you wanting to go and do it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, it's one of them things when you're a kid, you sort of watching the shows or reading about catching the fish. I mean, there was another book, Quest for a Legendary Fish, which was sort of written I think that was in the 70s. One I particularly remember reading and just being sort of enthralled by sort of the places they were going, and this fish that takes almost uncatchable. It takes all your line, cuts you off from rocks, and but you never think you're actually going to go and do it.
And when were your first trip, Gal, to do it? What were your very first ever one where you went and tried something like that?
I'd have been around 26, I think, when I went, so sort of nearly 20 years ago. I'd fished in France for carp. I mean, I mainly used to carp fish, so any overseas trips I did were generally sort of carp fishing trips. Sort of say France. I'd been catfishing in Spain on the Ebro, and then a couple of mates they'd been to India once. They were going back, and the chance came to sort of go with them down to the Kaveri River down in the south of India, near a place called Bangalore, like a few hours from there. That's the one. It's
beautiful. Look at that.
Yeah, it's just
stunning.
sort of littered with rock. I mean, the scenery out there is absolutely amazing. It's and the fishing itself is, it's just totally different to anything I'd seen before. I mean, turning up in India, it was a long flight. We had to sort of go a couple of different changes on airlines and stuff, and you turn up, walk out of the airport, and it's just absolute chaos. I remember it being sort of at night, horns blaring,
really,
people everywhere.
Almost like you see on a film that's trying to drum up that atmosphere.
India's like that. I mean, it's quite daunting the first time I went, because it's totally different to anything. I mean, now I love it. I mean, India's one of my favourite countries. It is that sort of the food, the people, like the chaos. It's
all adds to it.
Yeah, it all adds to the
It's
experience.
not dangerous.
India's pretty safe. It's I mean, there's a few. I mean, somewhat like elephants and snakes. You have to be careful of, but I mean, as a country, you don't. Yeah, I mean, you're unlikely to have any problems out there. It's certainly a lot safer than
so
a lot
India
of the places
and
I go to.
India and Mahseer was the first sort of foreign trips that you went on, targeting them kind of fish.
Yeah, for sort of different species to what you could catch in the UK.
Right.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, what's a Mahseer like as a fish, Gal? Like, where do you find it, and what is it? What's it look like? How does it feed?
I mean, they're probably the most impressive looking fish, I would say, that I've ever caught to look at. I mean, just sort of big, long. I mean, they're like a barbel, but with much bigger, almost like a barbel with carp scales is probably the best way to describe them.
Massive scales.
Sort of gold, massive scales, golden colour, like golden coloured
Got a
fins.
good picture there for you as well for anyone.
Oh yeah, that's like the first big one I ever caught, £44.
You're right, you look young there and all.
Yeah, and I'll say it would have been
Look
over
at
20
that.
years ago. That was a few less grey hairs back
That
then.
is a mad looking fish.
That's
Looks like
crazy.
it's almost got like armour or something, isn't it?
Oh, they're
yeah.
I mean, the mouths are really hard on them as well. I mean, you do lose quite a few.
What, just because your hooks don't get
Hooks
in
don't
properly?
penetrate very well, so you get hooks fall out. The river's absolutely like full of rocks.
Look at that for a fish, though, Toe.
They're so good looking.
So cool.
You just don't see anything like that over here, do you?
No.
Nothing. It's just, it's a mad looking fish.
Do you ever catch any little ones, like little tiny ones, Gav?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So there are some small
so
ones.
they're all sizes in there. We used to mess about. I mean, again, you'll catch them. They use something called a raggy, which is like a millet flour. They
Right.
make into. You either make it into big balls. I think we've got a picture somewhere there. Toby's just getting up. But yeah, it's basically like either little balls, like big, like boilie size ones.
There we go.
He's making the big balls there. Basically, with those, they sort of mix it millet flour with water. Those big balls, they boil it so it gets like a skin on the outside.
Yeah.
And then when you break them open, you've got like quite a stiff paste in the middle.
That's
and then you
interesting.
just mould a ball round the hook and using that as bait.
So what's a general size for a bit of bait?
Yeah, they are that sort of size
like
ball.
a grapefruit.
Yeah, that sort of big orange grapefruit sort of size. Yeah.
Wow.
But it depends how many small fish are about. I mean, some of the stretches I've fished out there, you've got a lot of little fish, like small Mahseer and little catfish and stuff. So we've basically we're using them sort of similar size, but you actually roll balls that size and then boil them like a big boilie, basically.
So it's harder.
And then hair rigging them rather than fishing it around the hook. So, yeah.
Right. That's cool. What's it smell like, that bait? 'Cause it looks like brown.
It's not got a lot of smell to it. It's like a cereal sort of smell to it. I mean, I did play about with flavours. I did quite well on black pepper oil, actually.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's got that sort of real peppery smell to it. Oh, that's the boilie size ones we were making, yes.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And is that
Proper like system there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Are they all the guides, them fellas? we
Yeah,
can
all
see?
the guides, and then a friend of mine, Joe, on the right there. Yeah, sat on the stall making them. Yeah.
That's so cool, that. Look like meatballs.
That's proper fishing.
Yeah,
isn't
I mean,
it?
we were
That's like-
just camping on the
Yeah,
beach
that's
for a
what I
few
mean,
days,
yeah.
so sort of making up bait as we went along.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you catch them on live baits as well. Crabs were really good if you could find crabs. Again, I mean, the locals were much better at getting the crabs. You sort of go along a rocky beach. I could lift up like 100 rocks and you wouldn't find one. They almost knew what type of rock
The crab would live
the
under.
crab would be under. Yeah.
And they just grab it.
I'll just be randomly lifting up rocks. They've lifted up one rock and like there's a crab.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but
That
it's
is
just living.
crazy.
It's just living by the river all that time. They just
Are
know.
them people that we saw in that picture, are they locals who help you and guide you and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean they'll live in. There's a couple of local villages there, and there was 3 fishing camps there that sort of government owned. It's all in sort of national park. I mean,
Is that a camp there?
I was actually camping wild there. I mean, where the proper camps were, it was more sort of like wooden sort of hut type things, and
Right.
But I did do a few trips. That was just fishing with an Indian friend. We just went and just camped for 10 days by the river. Took a cook with us and
Brilliant.
and a guide. So yeah,
What a trip.
yeah,
That is
amazing.
wild, isn't it?
It is
That
proper
so
wild,
cool.
that.
Oh, we had elephants come down.
Right up to you.
Very close, about probably about sort of 50 metres away. There was like
close
I had a
enough.
herd of like 40, 50 elephants come down one
Is
day.
it safe? Are they all right?
They're not particularly good. No, elephants are. Yeah, I'm wary of elephants. But
Really?
Our cook, he was like tiny little guy, just went running after him with a pan and a metal spoon.
What, and scared them off?
Yeah, trying to scare him off. I mean,
That could have gone very
Yeah.
wrong. Very.
I would have.
quickly.
Yeah, we were going in the other
Yeah.
direction. But no, he was used to it. The village he lives in, the elephants come all the time to try and eat all their crops. And obviously, if the crops are gone, they got no food. So they chase the elephants off all the
Pay
time.
me
but-
to run after a herd of
No,
elephants.
No, I wouldn't be going it. No, I mean things like tigers. I'm not too fussed about leopards, but
Do they
elephants,
come? You got
I've
tigers
not-
and leopards there.
You'll get leopards there, yeah, not tigers in that area. When I fished in the north of India and up into Nepal, and you're finding sort of like fresh sort of pug marks, like footprints from tigers.
That's a bit
every morning.
scary, gal. That's a bit too much for me, that.
No, it's fine.
And tigers, will they not come and attack you, generally?
They'll normally stay away from you unless you've got one that's injured, old injured one that can't sort of hunt properly anymore, or you get really unlucky and annoy one and get in its way. They'll normally walk off or
normally walk off.
Elephants, you've got a much higher chance of
bit aggressive,
getting trampled or
God.
Yeah, you get a bull elephant on its own,
That's not a way to
an
go,
elephant
that,
with
is
a
it?
baby. There,
Yeah, that's not a way to go.
No.
Trampled by an elephant.
Oh, they kill a lot of people every year.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you've got snakes out there as well. So.
I've got visions of you disappearing on one of these trips and just not coming back. I have,
It's always
honestly.
possible. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about the fishing. So Mahseer, that's your first. A lot of aspiration from a young age to go and catch one. How did it feel when you caught your very first one?
Well, the first big one I ever hooked, I decided to use braid out there. Sort of heavy braid, sort of £100 braid. I had a bite. I knew a few people who'd used braid and recommended it. First bite, it probably took about 100 yards of line in not many seconds, and the first rocket touch instant sort of cut off.
Oh no!
Yeah, I was absolutely gutted.
All them years wanting to go and do it.
So I sort of went back, spooled up with mono, which is what I've used ever since.
What is this on the same trip?
Same trip.
Yeah.
And I only did it once. Yeah, get something like that happen. It was sort of obvious braid wasn't the one with sort of sharp rocks around under sort of tension, a lot of tension as well. So yeah, and then the next day back in the same spot, similar thing happened. This time it sort of stayed on and carried on going downstream. In fact, it was the fish that Toby put up sort of earlier. That one.
That was your very first
that was
one?
The first big one. I'd had a couple of little ones, about 3-4 pound prior to that, but that was the first proper one. And we had to follow it you're fishing from a coracle, which is, it's basically the best way. It's like a 6 foot wide wicker basket with a tarpaulin around the outside of it. And you sort of followed it down the river in one of those, and probably about half a mile downriver, sort of finally sort of landed it. And
wow! And what's the fight like? Obviously, they take a lot of line when you first hook them.
They just don't give up.
Similar to a barbel.
Yeah, similar to a barbel, but on a bigger scale. I mean, you can hook them in rapids, and they'll start trying to go up the rapids.
So I've got a picture of the coracle there.
That's it. Yeah,
Look at that. That's what I remember John Wilson going downstreaming.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first turned up and saw one, it seems absolutely mental that you're going down a river that's full of rapids, rocks, everything else. But the thing with those is because of the shape of them, you can actually. Well, I mean, eventually I could, but the guides are really good at paddling them. They'll turn on the spot. Because it's round, so when you're like steering down a rapid, you can actually spin them really easily, almost round the rocks.
Got ya.
And if you do hit a rock, because they're made out of wicker, they flex. If you had like a wooden boat or something, it just gets smashed to pieces. The first rock you hit, or
that's one of them things. That's local knowledge over years of.
That's so
cool. Finding a piece of kit that you can do that with.
Yeah, I mean, I used to use them in Wales quite a lot in this country.
Did they really?
Yeah. If you look back at some of the old...
Going down the Y and Severn.
Yeah. Salmon fishing and things like that. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out next summer for a guru coracle.
Yeah, we'll get one built.
Get an orange one.
Get one.
Yeah.
That's amazing, that. I love it.
They were brilliant, yeah. I mean, I got quite good at paddling one in the end. I could actually sort of steer them and...
Did you ever fish there on your own, Gary, without guides and stuff?
Did some fishing, yeah. I mean, they didn't tend to like it at the fishing camp. You normally used to get moaned at by the camp manager when you came back in the morning. They just worried about guests obviously going out.
Getting at by an elephant.
Yeah, because it caused them loads of paperwork. And
Gary's gone missing.
Not very good for business either.
No.
Yeah.
But you used to go out and sneak
I used to
out?
go out a bit, yeah. I mean, in the end, I got to know quite a lot of the Indian anglers who fished there, and I joined. There was like a fishing club. There were Wildlife Association Southern India Fishing Club, so I joined that, which then meant you had access to the river whenever you wanted, like a small, like almost like day ticket cost.
Got you.
So I could go off and do it, but they still didn't like you doing it. I mean, quite often I would take my guide. He was quite happy just to go and sleep on the rocks for the night, and if I caught one, he'd get up. If not,
you carry on
just
fishing.
sleep hard fish. So yeah,
wicked. And are they What were the biggest one that you caught? I remember seeing a picture of a golden one of yours that were incredible.
Yeah, that was actually from a different river.
Right.
The biggest I had down there was a 52-pound one. That was at night, actually. I'd gone off and, we were camping, but I'd sort of gone off 400 or 500 yards upstream and sort of fishing on my own at the time. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
That's the 52.
That's 52, yeah, my guy, I do. Yeah.
Tell you what, looking at the lips on that one, I can see what you mean about them being thick, tough.
Yeah. I mean, that's a slightly different species. That's a bluefin Mahseer,
right?
Which they actually stocked. They probably shouldn't have been stocked into the river because it was actually detrimental to the golden Mahseer, which was the first one. You saw that picture of the 44. It was noticeable as time went on there. You caught more and more of these, and less. The other ones became very rare.
Right.
They were just more aggressive feeders. I think they spawned a lot more as well. A lot of the small Mahseer you were catching were bluefins in the latter years, and they almost sort of like pushed out the native species. But then the fishing on there all came to an end anyway.
Why is that?
It's now banned. Basically, it was a rich bird watcher because it's inside forestry department land, like national park, and he challenged it in court under an old wildlife act that fishing basically the same as hunting, and the court agreed with him. And although it's a government organisation that owned the lodges, they banned, just like blanket ban on fishing.
That's such a shame.
Terrible.
What a magical place to go fishing.
I mean, basically, this guy, I think he tried to build a lodge in the same area, and it had been blocked. So to get his own back, he
sort of got fishing banned.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, the only thing that was sort of protecting them from the Mahseer from poaching was the fact that there was like camps there, sport fishing. It was bringing in quite a lot of money, obviously, to the local community. I mean, a lot of the guys you had as guides before the fishing took off there, they were poachers. They'd sort of go out hand lining for Mahseer, catching the big ones and taking them for food.
But then when fishing came along, it's a job for them, isn't it?
Yeah, they were earning more money guiding, especially with tips and everything as well that you get off of sort of, either the rich Indian anglers who went or Westerners come in. So they didn't need to poach anymore, and they'd actually sort of protect it. It was their livelihood. They'd make sure that people in their village didn't go poaching because it's obviously detrimental to everybody else.
Yeah. And I suppose no one knew the river better than them because they'd grown up poaching it.
Yeah. They're always the best sort of guides. Yeah.
Watercraft-wise, I bet they know every rock.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
It's fascinating that their level of the knowledge of the river just must be on another level.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it probably gets poached more now.
It will get poached now. Dynamiting as well.
What do you mean dynamiting?
I mean, in India, dynamite's really cheap. I mean, you could buy a stick of dynamite. I don't know what it is now, but you could buy a stick of dynamite for about 50 pence.
What? Just from a shop?
Well, you'd have to get hold of it. It was cheap out there, even for the sort of Indian guys. It's still cheap.
What, like an old cartoon? Stick of dynamite.
And they literally light it, throw it in the river. Goes off, stuns everything in the pool, floats up or kills it, floats up to the surface, and then they.
So when you hear the old saying, couldn't catch out, even tried dynamite, that's where it comes from.
They actually do, yeah. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times in villages where you got poachers where they've got like arm missing, where they've got it wrong, and the fuse is obviously shorter, and it's gone off early. I mean, electrocuting the pools as well in some of the areas where it's a bit more developed. You've got power lines. They'll chuck a wire over it, chuck the other end in the pool. Obviously, it shorts out all the electricity in the area. But
Wow.
Like electrofishing, but
that I was just going to say that's shocking.
Yeah,
but it literally is. That is appalling, isn't it?
Yeah,
it must be so sad for the local people to see like all them fish and them fish disappear and
although
damage.
I mean, the problem you've got is a lot of them are very poor in those villages. They got nothing, and it's their way of sort of surviving. So it's I mean, the fact that the only reason they can electrofish it or dynamite is because things have moved on and you've got mining or whatever in the local area that's bringing the dynamite in that they can then buy, or you've got the power lines going overhead. So it's causes a lot more damage, obviously, than the traditional way where they'd go out with a hand line or a net, catch a few. Now they're not only taking all the fish out of a pool, but you're damaging the pool. It's like with sea fishing, like dredging, where they're dredging all the bottom, like pair trawlers and things like that. They're not only taking all the fish, but they're ruining all the habitat as well.
Or the actual bed of the sea, bed of
everything,
the river.
Yeah, everything. All the food, like all the stuff that supported, like fly life and mollusks and everything else, sort of destroying. I mean, the other problem you got is sort of hydroelectric projects in a lot of these countries as well.
Obviously, to create power.
But obviously when they put a dam in, it blocks migration routes for fish going to spawn, as well as, I mean, you have a nice sort of river and then they'll just flood the entire area. It just becomes a lake.
So all the fish that were natural to a river can't survive in the same in a lake?
No.
That's a shame.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going on all over the world. I mean, you've already lost species in China. I think the Yangtze River was the paddlefish. They've not caught one or seen one for about 30, 40 years. So
do you think they're extinct?
I think so, yeah.
That's sad. Yeah. Do you think that it'll only get worse for the Mahseer, Gary?
Definitely. I mean, those ones, the golden ones in the south, I mean, they're critically endangered now. They're listed on they're like on the red list.
That's really sad, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Even like you growing up, reading
it's
about
changed.
them.
Yeah,
it's been such a short window of people being able to enjoy the sport from them, hasn't it? When you actually think about it.
Yeah, and I mean the big number of big fish has actually gone down dramatically. I mean, you look back at some of the catches from 80 years ago, 100 years ago. I mean, back then they used to kill everything they caught, like trophy fishing. You'd see it; they'd have like a stick across with could have 10 big ones all hanging off of a stick that they've caught between their group in a day.
So there were more of them then.
There was a lot more
of them.
Yeah.
Right. And what's you mentioned that you'd been fishing elsewhere in India for a slightly different species of Mahseer, and I'm sure that's the picture I saw on your Instagram.
The shot you've seen, probably. Yeah, that was up in the right up on the border in Nepal. You've got the Surya River comes into the Kali River. I mean, the Kali River's a massive river, and again, that's one that they're going to dam in a few years' time, which will stop all the migration routes. But the Mahseer live in the main river a lot of the time. When the monsoon rains come, the sort of smaller side rivers start to rise. They migrate up them, spawn, and then come back down. And there's quite a famous junction there at a place called Pancheshwar, which is right on the border. And it's been producing some big Mahseer for years. And I've been planning to do a trip there at some point, and got a chance. That was just been 2019. It'd been just before sort of COVID and all that sort of came in. I mean, flew into Delhi, which is somewhere I've been to a few times, but it was...
But that's an interesting place, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
What's it like? What's it like in middle of Delhi?
Traffic it's just chaos
No rules.
Oh, there's no rules at all. You have two lanes, sort of marking of two lanes, and there'll be like 4 lots of cars trying to fit into 2 lanes. And I mean, I've driven in India a couple of times, and it's chaos.
I bet it's a bit scary, isn't it, driving in that lot?
Although everything seems to move at very low speed because it's so busy. If you do have an accident, it's going to be sort of more bumping than...
Do you see, have all the cars got little dints and bumps in them?
Yeah, a lot of them have, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You got all the rickshaws like weaving in and out of the traffic as well.
It's sort of what you imagine off a film, isn't it? Like bells
anything
ringing,
you've
horns
seen of it,
pipping.
horns go,
Yeah.
I mean, if you have an MOT in India, I think the only thing that has to work probably is your horn. It's the only thing they'd care about. As long as the horn works, everything else doesn't really matter. It's like that though.
Right. What's the food like? I've got to ask you, what's food like in India when you're on these trips?
I mean, I absolutely love Indian food anyway. It's one of my favourite things to eat and cook. I mean, I've cooked quite a lot of Indian food as well, as you've probably seen on some of my Instagram stuff. And
you put it on our little Corda group, don't you? Every time you're making an Indian curry.
Yeah. So I love it out there. And I mean, when you get out sort of middle of nowhere, it can be a bit more basic, but you always get by.
How does a proper Indian curry compare to like what we have over here in terms of like restaurants, takeaways? Is it similar? Is it?
It's very different, I'd say. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
why?
Just the way it's cooked. I mean, a lot of the stuff we get in restaurants over here, it's cooked. They just use a base sauce, add a few bits to it. It's all done so. I mean, even in India, it's actually some of the Indian restaurants out there. It's similar. It's not too dissimilar to here because they got to be able to cook it quickly. If you go in and order your meal, you don't be sat there for 3 hours while they make it in the traditional way. But the traditional food is very different. And
have you sampled some of that while you've been out there?
I've eaten quite a bit of that. Yeah,
I bet that's lovely. I've got that taste. We'll not go Nando's. We'll go for curry after.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Just the depth of flavour and everything is and you get totally different dishes. You get dishes you'll never see on a menu over here. Or very rarely. I mean, if you go, I've got places near where I live. Sort of, you got Southall and Slough, so very big sort of Indian populations and sort of Bangladeshi as well, Pakistani populations there. So you can go and get sort of proper. I always go on the basis if you see a restaurant and there's a lot of people, I don't know, Chinese restaurant or an Indian restaurant, there's a lot of Chinese or Indian people eating in there, then it means the food's good.
That's a really good theory, isn't it? That is a cracking theory.
Yeah.
If you were putting it on English terms, if you had a load of truckers in a little trucker's cafe, it's going to be a good English breakfast.
It's going to be a good breakfast, because they want, they'll eat good. If it's not, they won't have that business.
No.
If there's a load of people in there, I don't know, they've just got out of their Tesla and they're drinking a latte, it's probably not going to be.
Yeah, Adam Rooney's sat there.
Good. Yeah, if Adam Rooney
drinking his latte
out his Tesla, it's not going to be a sort of traditional fry up, greasy sort of fry up.
Proper northerners. Yeah. What about the fishing up that way then?
That was, it's very different up there. There's, I've done probably 4 or 5 trips to the north. It's hard work. A lot of it's lure fishing.
Cool. For Mahseer?
Yeah. Oh, they're predatory.
That's cool.
Yeah. I've never had anything big up there before that trip. I've sort of done a few trips. I lost one about £45-50 back in, I don't know, probably 15 years or so ago. I've sort of seen it. Eventually got a take on a lure and got cut off after about 20 minutes.
Oh no.
Yeah. Sort of closest I got to
big fish.
So 45 to £50, I reckon. I'd caught them to about 22 before that trip up to Pancheshwar. We got there, it was hot. Delhi, when we landed in Delhi, it was 47, 48 degrees.
Fahrenheit.
Centigrade. Yeah.
Oh my, that's half a boiling point.
Would you?
Yeah, you probably not built for.
No. That's like got a big sign with a picture of me on it and a red line through it.
Yeah, you'd be very red. Yeah,
that's half of boiling point, though, isn't it? That's ridiculously hot.
But it's humid as well. Like you could
in the city. It's weird. It's not that humid once you get outside. It's sort of just dry heat.
Oh, right.
Because it builds. The heat just builds up and up there, and then the monsoon rains come sort of June sort of time. Yeah. So it's you're just there just before monsoons. When we got up to the river, it was probably, I don't know, sort of 38 to maybe 41, 42 on the river. So it's a bit cooler, but still bloody hot.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And the river was very low and clear. We lure fished for about the first 3 days. It was only a 6-day trip and not a lot.
Did you catch anything?
I think I had 3 small ones up to £6-7, that sort of size, on just fishing little spinners. But you could just tell it wasn't ideal fishing lure. They're so wary, Mahseer. I've had it before. You'll get, I don't know, 3 or 4 casts with a lure in a pool. If you don't get a take in those first 3 or 4 casts, you could stand there the rest of the day casting and you won't catch one. They know you're there. They know there's something wrong with what you're chucking in repeatedly. Often with that sort of situation, we'll have a few casts in a spot, then you move on. Come back in a couple of hours, you've got a chance again.
Because they've had a little rest.
They've had a rest. Yeah, once they know you're there. But because it was slow on the lures, decided to sort of bait fish for them. And the guides, it's hard getting bait up there actually, because one of the only fish that you've got as bait fish up there is calibants. They only eat algae, so you won't catch them.
They're hard to catch then, aren't they?
They'll get them in a net. They use sort of like a net they sort of put down and sort of pull through the rapids. But the guides managed to get a few of those. So I was out there with 3 friends as well. They had some live ones, but they also had a great big dead calibants, which I just thought I'd give it a go. It was a massive thing. It's probably probably that sort of size.
What, 2.5, £3 in weight?
Probably they're quite long and thin, so probably £1.5, £2.
Big old dead bait.
It was big dead bait, yeah. And there was a spot when I've been lure fishing. I mean, the river there's maximum probably 20 yards wide. This tributary we're fishing. But on the bank you could fish from, there was a bit of an undercut, and I'd seen a fish sort of move there when I was lure fishing that looked quite big. It's just one of them spots. You know when a spot catches your eye and you're sort of drawn to it. It was one of those. So I sort of lobbed a bait out. Nothing happened for a couple of hours for me. I think friends I was with, they had a couple of decent fish on sort of fishing smaller live baits. But I decided to sort of persist with that, and eventually sort of got a take. It was just sort of steady
What's the
run.
bite like off them?
It wasn't like mental. It was just like steady. It obviously just picked it up, swallowed it, and just started moving off. And then I sort of struck. I mean, you strike sort of 2 or 3 times just to set the hooks.
Like wind down, strike?
Yeah,
strike
I mean, you're fishing. You got the clutch set reasonably loose as well, because again, it's very rocky. If you got a tight clutch, it's rocky. As soon as they go off, if they touch a rock, it's
cut
gone.
you off.
Yeah, you get cut off straight away. So, but once I'd set the hook on me, it just went off. It went sort of like probably 400 meters down, 400 meters down this side river, with me running after it over the rocks.
Didn't you have your little basket where you?
No, there it's all sort of bank fishing.
So you run along bank.
Yeah, and then once it sort of went out into the main river, which was a worry because it's so fast, that water. And if it carried on going downstream, I couldn't have followed it. There was only so far I could have gone.
Is this the fish?
That's me playing, yes.
So this is that fish we're talking about?
Yeah, that's actually bent into that fish.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
so you're running on all them cobbles and rocks?
Oh, you're running over that stuff, yeah, trying to follow it downstream.
Right, and what happened?
Luckily, where the side river went, like the tributary went into the main river at the junction, it was sort of slacker water there, and it stopped. It didn't go out into the main flow, and sort of managed to sort of get it back. I mean, the Carly River, it's snow melt water, so it's very grey colour, whereas the tributary is gin clear. I just remember seeing, like, sort of playing it in, and suddenly out of the grey water, this great big golden thing sort of appeared.
Wow.
So I took it quite easy, sort of playing it in, and another 3 or 4 minutes maybe a bit less. I mean, by that time, sort of had a fair idea it was big. In fact, the guide was getting excited as well. He's fished for him for 10, 12 years.
When he's dancing about on the rocks like a big one.
Yeah, you could just tell that. It's something a bit special. And I mean, he grabbed it. Yeah, guy Bobby. I mean, he fishes a lot himself. Really good fly angler. He's had Indian guy. Yeah, but he's had some big Mahseer. But he grabbed it first time and.
How do they land them then? When you say grabbed it, I'm assuming you don't get them in a net. You have to get in the water.
He's literally, I mean, they literally sort of get round behind them. Yeah.
Gal, that is a ridiculous fish.
Is
that the fish in question?
That's the fish. You can see only one of the hooks is in. I mean, that was actually buried in the bottom lip, luckily. But
so it's never going to come off.
No, well, could have. It was never going to come off, but then after he'd landed it, and I checked my line was probably about halfway, been worn about halfway through.
What, dragging on rocks and stuff like that?
It's like £30 mono. And it was probably £15, if that.
That looks, I mean, obviously, you're going to tell me that is a totally different species of Mahseer, I'm assuming, looking at the colour.
Yeah, I mean, that's a redfin Mahseer. I think their Latin name's Barbus tor. They don't actually catch many of them as well. They're quite rare.
That is stunning.
Yeah,
look at it.
I mean, it's the best fish I've ever caught, I think.
That's a statement, Gary.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
The best fish you've ever caught.
I reckon it was, yeah.
And how big were that then?
That was £62, which
biggest one you've ever caught, Mahseer?
That was by far, I mean, I think it's the biggest one that's ever been weighed of that species.
So you're pretty much a record fish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's probably over the years there would have been bigger ones caught and not properly weighed if they haven't got scales, or you'd have to be lucky. Yeah, but I mean, it's like a lot of these world records. They're world records on paper, but there's bigger fish being caught of.
Yeah, whether
species.
it be nets or for food or...
Even on rod and line, people just don't... a lot of it's done by the International Game Fishing Association, American IGFA.
Right.
They keep the records, but unless you actually join the IGFA and apply for a record,
Yeah.
there's loads of fish been caught.
Look at that. Is that the same fish
That's
there,
the same
Gal?
fish, yeah.
Folks, if you're listening, don't be an idiot and go on and have a look at this.
Just go and watch it. It's just mental.
just
Doesn't
so-
look real, does it?
No,
It's
looks
so
like it's
beautiful,
painted.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can see the width of the river there.
Yeah, it's not a big river,
how
is
narrow
it?
that bit is. That's the tributary where we're fishing. Yeah, little temple up on the hill
Don't you
opposite.
think it's cool though, Tobe and Gary? Like, you know when you see films and I've never been to India. I'd
No.
love to go. But you know when you see rivers in the Indian mountains like that,
Yeah.
you think, what lives in there? Like, is there fish in there?
Gary's gone and found
Yeah,
it.
he's gone.
That's what it is, isn't it?
Gone and got that fish out of that river.
I mean, yeah, and there's like
Yeah.
miles of water. You just,
Yeah.
I mean, you
It's-
just get lucky. I mean,
Yeah, but you've gone and done it.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Oh, yeah.
phenomenal. You know, if someone
Yeah.
thought, I really want to do something that's
Yeah.
different in life, I really want to have a go at, I'm going to
Something
have a
that
crack.
nobody else has done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to go
That's
to
that.
India and do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be certain times of year where there'll be pretty much no fish there as well in that area
Mm.
because they basically come up the big. I mean, when they're out in the big river, trying to find them is very difficult.
Right.
But they start gathering around the mouth of the tributaries before the rains come, and then as soon as it rains and the water level comes up, they all move up.
Similar to salmon
Yeah, I
in
was
the
going
UK,
to say
I
very
suppose.
similar to salmon. You get a run of them basically up the rivers.
Yeah.
So you're sort of going there at a time of year where hopefully they'll be there. I mean, I've had other trips to India. I went all the way to the Ganges to fish there. That was in September. Like to try and target the fish when they came back down the
What,
side
Mahseer
river.
fishing
yeah,
again?
Mahseer fishing again. When they come back down the tributary and back out to the Ganges, got there. The monsoon had finished earlier that year, and all the fish they'd already gone.
So you'd caught nothing.
No, there's nothing there to target. So
Yeah, what
Yeah.
I want to ask you, mate, because you've literally caught some of the most mental fish I've ever seen.
mm-hmm.
Is there anything that surprises you now or gets you like, do you know what I mean? Do you catch something and still go, wow, look at that? Or you go, I've caught
Yeah.
a massive 62-pound golden Mahseer. Like, that's nothing. Is there something that still gets your buzz going, if that makes sense?
I mean, they to be honest, they all do. I mean, that one. I mean, to get that, I'd probably spent a year getting on for a year of fishing in India over all the trips.
Yeah.
But I mean, even just going to a new river and catching a Mahseer, it's still really exciting. And
So you can go and still catch, say, a 5-pound one.
yeah, it still gives you a buzz getting a
Yeah,
smash on it,
yeah.
getting a hit on a lure, and yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
know, when you look at the settings, though, Toad.
that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. It's
Look
the
at that.
places.
Yeah,
It's yeah.
Yeah.
You've got that. It's not just the fish. I mean, if you went, I don't know, if it was some river in Europe that looked horrible and you were fishing for those, I wouldn't have the same interest in going and catching
No,
them.
of course.
Or
Yeah, that's
keep
got to be a
going
lot of
back.
it.
It's
Yeah.
the places that
It's
you're going.
so aspirational, isn't it? I'm sat here
Yeah. No, it's blown my mind.
in a really jealous but positive
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that is amazing. Do you think that fish is still alive and swimming about?
Probably. I guess that's probably a really old one. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
How big
that's-
do they grow?
I mean that species. I would guess they might go up to £80. That species. I say that is the biggest that I know of that's been weighed.
Yeah.
From quite a few people have said, but I would guess probably £80. And the same for. I mean, there's another species up there. I say that's a redfin Mahseer. You got a Himalayan golden Mahseer, which go probably to similar sort of size. I actually caught one of those, £45. The next cast after that.
So you just caught that one and chucked it back in and caught another?
Well, I put it back and I couldn't quite believe I'd caught that, so I didn't put rods out again for a couple of hours. And I wanted the people I was with as well to all get one each. And then, next cast, it was getting towards dark. I decided to
Next cast,
put a
just
rod
had another
back
one.
out. And
Yeah.
so that was like, £107 brace of them, which, yeah.
That's mad. There's so
That
many
is
different
so cool.
like breeds, if you like. Like we've seen 3 or 4 already, and they all look quite different, don't
Yeah,
they?
they do. Gold
Yeah.
characteristic, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're
all
really
very
cool.
slightly different. I mean, they're really nice. Those ones, again, with the flash and that, they don't look quite as gold, but you still got a lot of gold on it. Yeah.
They're almost like a koi version of the
yeah.
gold and the other ones, aren't they? The
Yeah,
blue
they're more
ones
colourful, the ones in the Northern River, because they're so gin clear, I think, the water. a lot of the time, especially when they get in the smaller rivers.
Amazing fish, mate.
Yeah.
I'm coming with you. If you ever get a chance to go
Oh,
again,
you're always welcome.
let us know.
Yeah.
I'd love to go. Do you
I'll
think
be
you'll go and
back
do it
as well.
again?
I'll definitely go back. Yeah,
So-
maybe not to that spot because it's one of those where you feel like I'm not going to better that trip. And there's so many other rivers in India to sort of have a go while they're still there.
So you will make the most of it. You will go back and catch some more.
I'll do something a bit more exploratory. Up in the northeast of India, it's very wild up there. Not many people, and there's just so much potential fishing up there. So I will go and do something a bit more exploratory. Yeah,
I'm coming with you.
you're welcome. Yeah.
Gal, I've got to ask, have you ever been on one of these trips? Because obviously elephants, tigers, hippos, crocodiles, all this stuff happening. Have you ever been on one and something bad's happened, or you've had a bit of a nightmare? Have you ever come close to like something dangerous or bad happening on them?
I had quite a few where things have gone wrong. I mean, we've had boats nearly sink and sort of various bits and pieces. I mean, probably the most dangerous thing that's happened to me was getting stung by a wasp. All these things, elephants, hippos, crocodiles.
Little waspies, done you?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a little bit allergic to wasps and bees. I was in Colombia. We basically had a swarm of these big red wasps come out of the jungle at us as we went past in a boat.
No.
Not out the
like-
wood. Not out the
That's
woods.
like my worst nightmare.
Oh, they're
I
horrible.
couldn't imagine
things.
anything worse.
I like how you went, not out the woods, not out the trees, at the jungle.
jungle.
They literally, you just heard them coming. I mean, I got stung once on the wrist. Within about half hour, everything had swollen up, lips, face, throat, the lot.
Got any photos?
I haven't from when I was. Oh no, I wasn't really thinking about taking
No.
photos at the time. I was
taking some selfies.
Yeah, take yourself
Passing
there.
out.
Had a bit of Botox there, gal.
Yeah, it didn't look good. Well, it would have done. I didn't see myself in the mirror. I didn't have a mirror, but yeah, but everything. I mean, breathing was all funny, heart rate through the roof, and literally, I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. It was just getting dark, so no way of getting out. River's too dangerous to go anywhere, so I was basically just laying in a tent for about 2 hours, struggling to breathe, heart rate through the roof.
What kind of? Obviously not a normal wasp. Do you know what kind of wasp it was?
Don't know what they were. I mean, they were massive things. They're probably about inch and a half long, inch and a half long, like red coloured ones. I mean, even the local Indian guides were sort of worried about them. They're bad anyway.
That says enough, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if the locals are like.
But
Red Colombian jungle wasp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
that's what we'll
definitely
call them.
avoid them. I mean, it's that sort of anaphylactic shock, basically. Sort of when I was obviously survived because I'm sat here with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I got tested when I came back, actually. Went to the doctor and that, got tested. I think it was 60 times more allergic than average to wasp stings.
So if you got stung in UK, you'd be in trouble.
I would. Well, I've always swelled up when I got stung, but I've never had a bad reaction. But yeah, they did say that next time it could be worse, and I now carry a couple of EpiPens when I remember.
At the time, how worried were you? Like when you sat in that tent and you've been swelled up for 2 hours, did you think, I'm going to die here? Or did you think...
No, I wasn't that. I was concerned, but I wasn't that worried. I'm not someone who really worries about stuff. I've always taken a view, once it's happened, there's not a lot I can do about it, so there's no point panicking because that would probably make it worse. I mean, if your heart rate's already up and everything else, panicking is only going to make it worse. So just try and stay calm and hope for the best. I've always sort of taken that sort of view with trips and stuff I do anyway.
Obviously, you mentioned there, like, you're miles from anything. What's the most remote you've ever been, Gal? Because you've been to all these amazing places fishing.
Yep.
And if I walk down my local canal in an evening with a lure rod and it starts to go dark, I get a bit twitchy. I'm like, I'm in the woods, down the canal on my own, right? And I could probably...
Hopefully on your own.
I could probably cast to my house from there. Like, that's about as remote as it gets for Matt Godfrey. What's the most remote it's ever been for Gary Newman?
Probably a couple of days away from anything.
2 days away.
Yeah. Day and a half, 2 days by boat.
Sorry, you
probably
mean
from
like 2 days travel away?
2 days
from
travel from anything. Yeah, by boat.
Christ.
I mean, some of these places you fly into, you literally. I mean, some of the South American countries and bits of Africa. I mean, it's just green everywhere. You look on a map, it'll just be green.
Right.
Some of these, a couple of countries off this, you got few say cities, like big towns or cities on the coast, and then the rest of it, the interior, is just nothing. The odd Indian village, But even there, I mean, even the Indian villages, we've been a long way from any of those before. So yeah, a good day plus day and a half travel.
So if something goes wrong, if you broke
you're
your
screwed.
arm, or you're knackered, aren't you? Oh.
Yeah, you're not getting out of there quickly.
Right.
No phone signal, or sometimes take a sat phone. Not always.
What? I know this sounds crazy, but like, are you there on your own, or is it other people you know, or is it an organised trip with, say, you and someone else who's booked the trip?
You've always got local guides. You couldn't go to those places without local guides. Just finding your way on the river. Sometimes they're fishing guides. Sometimes they're just people who know the river and can drive a boat.
And you sort the fishing out.
You sort all the fishing out yourself. Yeah. So some of them you got like people who are almost professional guides and do it all the time and know the fishing really well. Others haven't got a clue with the fishing. But
what do you do when you're that far away about things like food and drink, Gal?
You sort of. I mean, some of the trips I've done with just sorry, talking to drink, just have a bit of water.
Yeah, have a bit now, mate.
But no, some of the trips you're just sort of drinking out the river. I've done trips like that. Some of them are the more organised trips. If you've got a freezer, generator, all that sort of stuff. Catching fish, if you can catch a few small fish and that to eat.
That's properly
you're
wild,
happy doing
it?
that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I haven't got a problem with that. Yeah, just take a sack of rice and then just eat whatever you can catch to go with the rice. That's
wild. That's Rainy.
Yeah.
Do you plan your trips right? I imagine Gary, like in his office, he's just got a world map on the wall and just throws darts in it.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're going to go there.
It's not far. I mean, I'm not actually that organised with my own trips, although I do a lot of stuff for other, like with work and stuff, for organising stuff. My own trips, I'm not so worried. I mean, I've got friends who, their biggest concern when you go away will be what they're going to eat.
Yes.
Which has never bothered me, as long as you get something and you're not going to starve to death.
Worst case, you're just eating a bag of rice, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Just
That's
rice.
It. Bag of rice and drink out at river.
Yeah. As long as I've got some chili sauce or something with me, I'm fine with rice.
Yeah.
Something to give it a bit of flavour. And
I want to bring this back to UK because obviously since I've known you this last sort of 5 years, I'm always asking you about your UK trips, and I know you put an awful lot of time and effort into that kind of fishing. Toby touched on it earlier, but what do you enjoy the most about fishing in the UK, Gal? Because like Toby touched on, shortly after you've had that buzz of doing all that different stuff, coming back and fishing for a tench in England isn't the same fix as a golden Mahseer in India.
No, I mean, the places aren't as spectacular, but it's still that buzz of catching a fish. When you hook into something, the fight off of it, and even just trying to work out how to catch it in the first place, you still get a real buzz off of that. And when you do work it out and you succeed, it doesn't matter what you're fishing for. You could be fishing for, I don't know, dace down on a river, like one of the smallest species in the UK. If you find some that are big for that species, work out how to catch them and then succeed, it still gives you a buzz in the same way as maybe going and catching, I don't know, a huge catfish somewhere the other side of the world.
Is it?
Sorry, I just want to say, is it the same buzz? Because, like Matt said, a golden Mahseer is surely that's a bigger buzz than, say, like you said, a tench or a dace. Or is it the same buzz for you?
It depends. I think it depends how much effort you've put in as well.
Right.
If you go and catch something that's sort of easy and you've not put a lot of effort into catching it, it's less of a buzz than if you catch something that you've sort of spent weeks sort of planning and sort of fishing for.
You're not going to be able to answer this question, I don't think. No. What's your favourite UK fish to fish for, Gary?
I would say I haven't got one. I know it's a question people get asked a lot. It's whatever I want to fish for at the time, given the sort of conditions. I don't know, middle of winter, if the lakes are frozen, you can normally go and catch some grayling on a river. Rivers are in flood. You always find something to fish for.
What a lovely way to look at your fishing that is, though. Like, there's always something to target.
There is, yeah. Venue, whether it's venue or species, you can always find something to.
Is it, obviously, you talk about if you can find dace and they're a decent size. Is the size of the fish the most important thing for you in your fishing?
These days, I mean, I do get a buzz out of trying to catch fish that are big for the species, but it has to come down to the venue as well. I wouldn't want to go and sit somewhere that's sort of where there's anglers all round you and it's packed all the time. not a particularly nice looking place to fish just because it's got some big fish in it. That wouldn't appeal to me particularly.
So even if the biggest Tench in the UK were at not a very nice venue, you wouldn't be interested in going to catch it?
No, I don't think so, no.
That's,
it's still,
that's interesting.
Yeah, the size is a big factor, but it's not the only factor. It's got to be somewhere I want to fish as well.
Right,
And,
right.
I mean, as I've got older, how busy somewhere has come into it as
You want to be on your own a bit more.
Yeah, sort of you against the fish rather than... I think some of that probably comes from sort of fishing overseas as well. I say, yeah, it's difficult when you've got people all around you and it's packed. You almost drop it in where's left, like whatever swim is left on the lake, rather than because you particularly want to be fishing that swim. I mean, it takes a lot of the watercraft away as well.
Yeah, quite a bit of skill in choosing the spot you fish, and picking the spot.
Yeah, I mean, if you turn up at a lake, you know where the fish are going to be based on the conditions and everything else, but you end up fishing 200 yards up the other end of the lake because there's no swims down there. That to me isn't particularly enjoyable. I'd rather go somewhere that was a bit quieter, maybe the fish are a little bit smaller, and that you can actually sort of fish how you want to fish.
Got ya. That's that makes sense. And we've touched on Tench. I know that this time of year that's just ahead of us now is a time when I've seen you in the past, like target Tench. You have a little campaign for them. Will you be doing that again this year coming up?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I've got a few plans to have a go. Yeah, I've got a couple of big lakes that have got some big fish in that I'm going to have a go at. Probably starting more into May. April's often a little bit early, especially on big gravel pits. The water's not warmed up properly yet, and they're not that active.
What's your experience in Tench fishing like? What's your biggest Tench you've ever caught, and what do you class as a big one?
My PB, I mean, it's 14 pound 4 ounces.
No, it's a Tench, gal.
That's Tench, yeah.
No, they don't grow that big.
They do.
Mate, you wait
Really?
You wait till you see the size of that Tench.
Yeah,
Look
that one.
at
Yeah.
that.
I was a bit younger then. I think I was 17 at the time.
Do you think he looks like Adam Sandler out of Big Daddy?
He does.
Do you think he does?
Yeah.
He does.
He looks like him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That is. We've got to Photoshop Adam Sandler's head on
You
that.
should.
Definitely.
That's long ago. That's that long ago. I think that was a print. That's a photo of a print. So that's why it's a bit grainy. But yeah.
That is massive.
Mm.
It's fat, isn't it?
That's really fat. I mean, that was that was carrying quite a bit of spawn, that one at the time.
Wow. And that's 14 pounds.
Yeah, I think it was 3 ounces under the British record at the time.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did that feel? You know, when you hold your scales up, and you know the British record's 14.7 and yours goes 14.4, do you think, oh, you could have had a bit more bait?
I wasn't particularly upset. I mean, it was much big. I mean, when I landed it, I think my biggest Tench before that was probably about 7 pounds, something like that. So it was that much bigger than anything I'd caught before. I wasn't that fussed at the time about,
And where did you catch that, Gal?
That was a lake down in Rickmansworth, Berry Lake.
Right.
I mean, I think it's the only Tench I ever caught out there. I actually ended up catching that one 3 times.
Same fish?
Yeah.
What, the same weight?
No, I did 13.7 and 12.15 other couple of times, but it was one that held its weight all through the year as well. But yeah, I never had another Tench out of there.
I wonder if that Tench recognised you or twigged on.
You never know. It's probably
Well,
not him
Adam
again.
Sandler again.
Yeah,
not
I'd
him
love
again.
to know. Like when you get him at Landing Net watching you last night on a movie. And what's obviously?
I mean, I was carp fishing at the time. I actually caught that. I'd seen a Tench roll and chucked out a lighter rig and everything for it, rather than that I was on there sort of doing a campaign to catch Tench. So.
Right, but you did target a Tench by fishing a bit lighter.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's daytime.
How old were you there, Gal?
17, I think I was there. 17 or 8. Yeah, yes, it would have been 17, I think. Yeah, yeah.
That is fantastic fish. And what's for people listening? I'm interested in knowing if someone wants to go and do some big Tench fishing. How do you go about targeting big Tench specifically?
I mean, the hardest thing is trying to find a water with the size of fish you want. I mean, to me, a big Tench is. I mean, I'm looking to try and catch fish that are double figures, like anything over £10. And these days, where there's a chance of something bigger, like 12, 13, ideally. But yeah, it's just getting on the right. I mean, quite a lot of the lakes are carp waters as well. So you obviously got a problem. Actually, that's my second. Yeah, just come up there on screen. That's the second biggest one
That's massive.
Yeah, that was
massive.
13.6. That was fishing purely for tench. That's actually out of Corder Lake.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's what Corder
got named after.
bigger sister companies.
Yeah, I think Danny, when he was fishing down in the Calm Valley years ago,
called it Corder.
Called it Corder after Corder Lake. It was it's a lake owned by, again, that's a carp lake. It's British Carp Study Group own that lake, but it's probably the best tench fishing lake in the country.
And will you be going back there this year?
Unfortunately not. No, they're building HS2 railway through the middle of it.
No.
Yeah, so it's
fishing on there.
No, it's gone. I mean, they've actually it's pretty much gone, the lake. They got concrete bits sticking out the middle of the lake at the moment. So.
What's happened to the fish, Gary?
Some of them got taken out, and some of them are probably still in there. Whether they're still alive, I don't know. But yeah, they did get a lot of fish out of there.
Good, because I'd hate to know that fish like that have anything bad's happened to them.
I mean, I'd probably get on for 15 good years of fishing on there before it happened, and the fishing was starting to go downhill a bit. You're getting sort of like the odd double, but the sizes, had dropped off compared to when it was at its peak.
That's a phenomenal. It's almost got a little bit of purple on its middle of its belly, that one, hasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's,
That is stunning, absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
What about bait-wise and stuff? Like you mentioned, you caught the big and carp fishing. Do you go down that route of boilies and stuff, or natural baits? Do they play a part?
I go the other way with tench. I mean, I've always found with tench, they're really hard to catch in the spring. Probably even carp fishing, they seem to be. I mean, I know carp anglers still catch them through the spring, but they seem to be less catchable. They're a bit more wary the way they feed. Come the middle of summer after they've spawned and they're really having a feed up, you catch them boilie, pellets, whatever. But I like fishing caster and worm. It's probably my favourite baits during the spring for them.
Right.
I use quite a lot of caster and a lot of chop worm and just soil in there as well, like the stuff the worms come in. And I mean, on some waters, that's all I'll put out. I mean, hemp I've used in the past, which works for tench, but I'm not convinced it's necessarily the best attractor for them. I think they can wise up as well. I mean, obviously hemp's very oily. I mean, on Corder Lake particularly, I noticed once I dropped hemp out of my sort of spod mix, I was catching more tench. I was getting less carp by accident because used to catch quite a lot of the carp as well by accident whilst you're tench fishing.
Just on your tench tackle?
On the tench tackle, yeah. I mean,
get them out?
Yeah, I've had them to over 40 pound on like size 12 MWGB Garuruk.
Never. That's phenomenal.
£1.75 rod, yeah.
But that's a good fight, isn't
they
it?
don't half go well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's that initial run. If they don't do you on the initial run or find a snag, with a bit of patience, you'll get them in. But
that's really cool. That is really cool. £40 down tench gear.
Yeah. No, it's a bit mental.
Yeah, phenomenal. Phenomenal. I bet a hook looks tiny in the lip, doesn't it?
Ridiculous. Yeah. Just cut the little rubber casters on the sticking out when you.
Is that generally what you use? A rubber caster?
I do like rubber baits from. Yeah.
Why is that?
I like the buoyancy. I mean, the way they're feeding, I fish sort of with the hook laying on the bottom, and then I use quite a long hair as well. So anything up to probably an inch or so hair with just two rubber baits just sat up off the bottom, sort of balancing the weight of the hook. So when they're coming in, it's just something a bit more visual. They pick up easier. Here we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Very simple rigs. I mean. Fishing again, in that shot, people obviously listening can't see it, but if they look, that's fishing over siltweed.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, which is
green,
something
slimy stuff.
It's something I'm always looking for when I'm tench fishing. You'll catch them over clean gravel, but I'll try and fish with a bit of weed if I can, and that green, slimy siltweed is the perfect stuff.
What do you think they prefer to feed on?
I think they like feeding like, yeah.
Why is that, Gal?
There's food in it for a start. I guess they probably eat it as well.
Yeah? Why not?
Yeah. once it goes sort of black and horrible, you get the dead stuff, it's not so good. You'll still catch them over it, though, if there's food. It
must be full of, like, freshwater shrimps and joker and bloodworm and grubs.
Yeah, I quite often, when I'm sort of plumbing about, once you find a spot that looks a bit interesting on the back of a bar or something, chuck a lead out, short piece of line, sort of 2 or 3 inches with a hook on it, and just drag it along the bottom and see if you can
See if there's any weed
See what
there.
weed there is, and see what colour it is. And, yeah.
Little things like that you'd never, I'd never know you go into that depth to plumb up and find them spots for these fish.
I mean, quite often the clean spots as well, they've already been fed on. That's why they're clean. All the sort of layer of silt that might have been on top or a bit of weed that was on there, they've already cleaned those spots off. I mean, I've had it before where you're catching quite well. Eventually the spot goes, it's just like gravel, no weed or anything left on it, and the fish, your catch rate will go down, and as they go off and start feeding elsewhere.
So it could be too clean.
I think they've already eaten what was there, whatever naturals. I mean, obviously your bait is a factor, but there's reasons why they feed on those spots naturally in the first place. Like when you see them bubbling and fizzing there.
Yeah, that's not on gravel, is it? That's on silt and
that'll
soft
be on
bottom
silt or something. Yeah.
Really interesting facts there, mate. It's quite a lot of depth gone into that thought process, isn't it? It's quite deep. And
definitely to find, And I mean, even fishing in like thick weed as well. I mean, some of the lakes I fish are really weedy. You have like Canadian pondweed. As long as I can get a drop, and I know I'm fishing on something, it could be like you could have like sort of 6-8 inch Canadian pondweed on all over the bottom. It's still sort of fishable, especially I use the method quite a lot.
Just a method feeder, like an old M-Stat one.
Yeah, I've got some old inline leads. They don't make them anymore. A company called Atomic used to make them years ago, and I've still got a load of them. They're just perfect for a method ball round them.
And what do you mould around that then? Ground bait, worms?
Yeah, mainly just ground bait ball. Then the hook link sort of folded back inside the ball, and then I just have it sticking out the side. So just literally just the hook bait and the hooks poking out the side. And I think when you feed it down on a tight line, even just that little bit of drag, it helps make sure it lands on the top. So you always sort of presented. And any weed on the bottom with the method ball coming down, it's going to flatten whatever it's landing on, and you just got like a little pile of ground bait there with your hook bait sat on top.
That's an effective way of fishing on like rough ground, innit? Weedy ground.
Definitely, yeah. It just means you just know you're fishing, especially with tench fishing. I mean, it varies from lake to lake depending on where the fish are, but quite often you'll be casting every hour, 2 hours, or sometimes I'm not. But
what to round up Tench, what do you think your chances are of beating that PB of 14.4 that you caught when you were 17?
It's probably very low. I mean, even getting that other one, that 13, was. I mean, that took a lot of years. I mean, I've had 35 doubles now, I think, over the years, and not got one that's been even vaguely close to a 14. I mean, I've just joined a lake up in Cambridgeshire, Fen Drayton, that I think I can't remember, it was 14.10 or 14.11, something like that. It did a few years ago.
So there's potential.
There's potential. It's one of those lakes that you could sit on there all spring and catch nothing, or if you do get one, it could be a monster. There's low stock, but the fact it's done fish of that size before, that one's probably not still alive, but
there's still a chance.
There's still a chance of something really big.
Really cool. I want to go tench fishing now, Toe. I want to go Mahseer fishing, Nile, Perch, tench fishing. This next fish that I want to talk about it's always amazed me ever since I was a kid. I think it's because they're so quirky and weird and different, and I want to talk about them from a specimen point of view, Gal. Some people love them, some people hate them. I'm going to say a lot of people hate them.
Yep.
Eels.
Yeah.
Tell me what your experience is with eels. Have you ever caught any big ones of them?
Like you say, it's one of those species that a lot of people hate. I mean, I must admit, I'm not a massive fan of like bootlace ones that just tie up all your rigs and they're just a nightmare to deal with. But I do quite like fishing for them, sort of like specimen size ones.
What do you class as a specimen eel?
I'd probably be targeting fish like sort of £5 and upwards. If I'm...
My biggest £4.10.
That's still a very big eel.
Good than that,
yeah. That's a really good eel, that is, yeah.
Yeah, I caught it pike fishing though.
Did you?
Not eel fishing,
on a dead bait, yeah.
On a full sprat, yeah.
Blimey.
Osdyke Canal.
Well, that's nice. A big eel, that is, yeah.
Not specimen though. You said £5.
Well, that's near enough, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, so £5. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously very impressive. Just the length of them as well. And the age as well. I mean, that's going to be a really old fish.
How old are we talking?
I mean, they reckon 10 years for every pound, eels.
Oh.
I've always heard. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's comes down to food source. You'll get waters, especially now with some lakes having crayfish in them. I think they grow a lot quicker because they've got such a good supply of sort of protein source there. I mean, the lake where my biggest eel came from is like 200-acre gravel pit.
That's big.
Yeah, it's a big old place.
That's huge.
Yeah.
What's it called?
It's Broadwater Lake down in the Calne Valley. It's so 200 odd acres, and
That's massive. That is massive.
they're hard to track down, eels as well. It's not like carp fishing where you go along there, you see them all jumping or go bream fishing, they roll.
Yeah,
You
even
don't-
fizzing and
You don't see anything with eels.
No.
You're fishing blind a lot of the time. You're almost just relying on them. I mean, that lake, a lot of it was fishing in the margins, and you're just relying on the fish sort of coming round at some point.
Yeah.
And
Fishing in the edge.
Yeah, and it wasn't a very high stock lake. It always had a reputation for being really difficult as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually got really lucky on there. The first night I ever fished on there, I had an 8-pound 1 ounce eel.
Which
That
is that
is
one there.
ridiculous.
isn't
That one there, yeah.
Look at the size of that.
Yeah, I think that was 45.5 inches long and 10.5
That is
10.5 inch girth. Let's get on for 4 foot.
How
yeah.
big? Like, look at my arms.
Probably a bit bigger than that, even. Yeah, probably like that. Yeah.
8 pound.
1 ounce. Yeah.
Look at the thickness of it. Is that thicker than my arm?
I think it was 10.5 inches round, something like that. I can't remember
Wow.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, look at it. You've got it in your hands there. Your fingers are like not even
No,
nowhere near round
No.
it.
So you could get.
It shows what a
Look at that.
shows what a nice bloke Gal is, because when you're boasting about your 4-pounder, he's like, "Oh, it's quite big." That I've already seen the picture for the 8-pounder.
Yeah.
He's got. He's like, yeah, it's all right.
Twice as big.
Twice as big.
Twice.
Quite.
That
That's
is
ridiculous.
unbelievable. And they got some character to him. Like,
Oh, they
look
have,
at his
yeah.
eye and face and.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect they're probably that. Even if it's not 10 years for every pound, that's probably 50 years old or more.
This might be a really silly question. Are they predatory fish?
They are. Yeah, I mean, they eat all sorts. They eat small fish,
Right, okay, yeah, I
but they
was gonna
also
say
eat,
what they eat.
yeah, all sorts of sort of mollusks and
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
other bits and pieces.
Can I ask you how you caught that, Gal? What were your tactics to catch that fish?
That was actually on a worm. I'd been fishing for the Tench, and I'd sort of caught as many. I always got to the stage where I'd caught what I wanted to catch that season. I'd had 16 doubles that spring.
Wow.
Into early summer.
That's a right capture a tench, that innit? 16
yeah,
double figure
by
fishing.
far my best season. Yeah,
That must be one of the best ever recorded tench catchers. 16 doubles in a
I think
season.
I think it's the most I've heard of anyone having in a season. Yeah, certainly up there.
Phenomenal.
You never know. Someone could have had one and just never publicised it. You
Yeah,
just don't
yeah.
know with those sort of things. But yeah, I sort of felt that I'd sort of caught enough tench and they were about to spawn, so I sort of decided to have a go for the eels and turned up in the dark after work, and yeah, about midnight, 1 in, had a run on a worm, fished on a Dyson rig.
What's a Dyson rig then?
It basically suspends your bait. So you've got a sort of lead afloat, and your line's coming down to the float, like a sub float underwater, line
Right.
coming down to the float, and then your hook link's hanging off your line, so the bait's hanging down.
Ah, so your bait's not actually on the bottom.
It's not on the bottom, no. I say that lake's got a lot of crayfish in it. You put a worm on the bottom back then, you'd be lucky if it lasted a minute before it got eaten.
Got you.
You try popping them up off the bottom, and the crayfish still get them. They walk along the hook link or
Crafty
push it
devil.
down. Yeah, yeah, they'll do it with carp baits as well.
You can imagine them like pulling the line
Yeah,
down
not far
with a
off,
claws,
yeah,
can't you?
yeah.
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, well, they can see it. They just sort of walk. They can swim a bit as well, crayfish. So
Right.
yeah. But where it's hanging down, the bait's lasted a lot better. And I had a run. Struggled to get it in my net because I'd not really done a lot of eel fishing before. Certainly not for ones anything like that size. I remember sort of getting the head all the way to the spreader block, trying to lift the net, and all it did was just swam. It just swam back out again.
Oh no.
It did it like 3 or 4 times.
Bet you
See
were
it was
scared,
big. Oh,
weren't you?
could see it was big, and I mean, as it turned out, it was well hooked. It wasn't coming off, but I didn't know that at the time in the pitch black. And I mean, literally ended up getting it over the net, throwing the rod down, and just bundling it
Yeah.
into the net. And lifting
Literally
it.
get in that net,
Yeah,
please.
it was. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Right,
Luckily,
right.
it went in, and yeah. I say that was first night on the water, and then probably did another over 200 nights after that over the space of 5 or 6 years or so. I had one more eel
No.
in all that time.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
You should have quit while you'd got that one.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah.
I've got that. There you go. Is that?
That's the
is that
Dyson rig.
Is that
yes.
the Dyson rig?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I can
yeah. You
see.
can see like the float, the lead in my hand and the float just above my hand. That sort of slides up. You sort of fish a stop, so it's sort of
That's really cool. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like a sunken paternoster with
It's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wicked. Is that at that same lake, Gary?
That is. Yeah, that's just a little part of it at one end. But
Right.
Yeah.
Broadwater.
Yeah, it carries on going for about a kilometre up that way.
Huge place.
It's massive lake. But
Do you have to
yeah.
use a wire trace and stuff for eels or fluorocarbon?
That was actually caught on a £50 armour cord.
Right.
Which I mean, I think it depends what they're feeding on naturally. In some waters they got really sharp teeth on them, and I think you just get bitten off all the time if you're not using wire. Whereas the ones in there didn't seem to be too bad.
Right.
I never actually got bitten off. I lost one other eel on there, which was to a hook pull. But
Yeah, just come off.
yeah, just come off. Yeah, it came up on the surface. That was a big fish as well.
Right. I can't
To see
believe
it thrashing in the dark and then hook pull.
that must have been gutting because I can't believe
yeah.
200 nights
Yeah.
fishing and you'd caught 2.
Yeah, it's almost at the state. I mean, with eel fishing, you're fishing open bail arms. You don't want any resistance. You want to let them take it. You don't want to deep hook them, but you want to let them take a bit of line. You're almost scared to close over the bail arm and strike when you get a run because in case you miss it.
Yeah.
You've waited that long for that.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't think about it like
or even
that.
to pick the rod up. You're scared you're going to mess it up or do something.
Yeah.
It drops the bait. And yeah.
You've had your
You
chance.
don't even get a chance to strike. Yeah.
Did you have any of them? Did you have any?
I didn't know. I had a few hairy I mean, there was pike in there as well. And you get like £5-6 jack sometimes took a liking to the worm, which nearly gave you a heart attack.
Yeah, but that were a
Bite
fast run, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were quite similar. I mean, eel runs can be quite quick, especially when they're that size. I think because they're big fish, they just take it and
Swim off.
And yeah,
It sounds really cool. So
Yeah.
different. So different.
yeah. And again, that lake was. I mean, I would say most of those nights I did on that lake, I was probably the only person on the lake,
Right.
or maybe 1-2 other people.
What's
Never
the
busier
what's the
than that.
record for an eel, Gary? Do you know?
£11 2 ounces. I think it's the oldest coarse fishing record that we've
And where
got
was
in the
that
UK. That was Kingfisher Lake down near. I think it's down near Bournemouth, somewhere down that way. 1978, I think, from
Do you-
memory.
do you
Steve
think-
Terry.
There's a lot of big eels kicking about still. Do you think there is as many, or do any of your specimen friends go eel fishing much?
I know a few who do. I mean, they're not fish for much eels. You've not got loads. It's not like carp fishing where you've got loads of eel anglers out there. So I'm sure there's waters that have got eels in. That the only time they're going to get caught is if they get caught by accident, if they eat a boilie or someone's bunch of maggots or whatever it happens to be. I mean, commercial lakes have done some quite big ones,
Like carp fisheries
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. They've done some quite large ones in the past. Certainly, sort of like £8-9.
That's massive.
By
That is
yeah.
massive.
I think the record was caught by accident. I'm sure that one that it was 11-2 was caught by accident.
What, pike fishing or something?
I think he was carp fishing
Right.
because they eat boilies and pellets and things like that.
Right. We'll have to go eel fishing as well, Tobe.
I'll add it to the list. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, growing list.
So cool. So cool.
Oh, they're great fish.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a go, but I'm not putting 200 nights in for 2 bites or 3 bites.
I think the problem with big eels is because they're not like common. So you are, most of the people I know who fish for big eels, they spend a lot of time catching.
How
not
do you
a lot.
stay motivated, Gary? So, like you said there, done over 200 nights over 5 or 6 years. Like,
I wouldn't be able to do
5
that.
or 6 nights, I'd be like, right, I'm giving myself a good chance. When you get to that 100 mark and you haven't had one, how do you keep going back to do it? What do you...
You've got, I mean, with that type of fishing, you've just got to think or be confident that it is going to happen eventually, and it's a matter of time. I mean, I know other people who fish that lake, it's always been difficult on there. I mean, sometimes it's gone 2, 3, 4 years without an eel being caught. I mean, there have been good years on there as well, where someone might have had half a dozen or... So you know you've got to put that sort of time in for those fish on that sort of place. But you could catch I think there's probably a British record swimming around in there.
But even now, there still could
there
be.
There certainly would have been. The crayfish population, for whatever reason, in the last 4 or 5 years, seems to have gone down massively. They've just disappeared. So that food source has gone. The pike in there, which used to be... I mean, there's not a lot of other fish in there. There's so many cormorants on there. There's probably 200 cormorants at sometimes. So there's not a lot of little fish in there. So the crayfish were one of the only food sources. And even the pike in there have got quite skinny now compared to what they were. So whether there's eels that size still in there, possibly.
It's nice to think they might be.
They probably are. I mean, finding them would be the problem. I mean, when there were crayfish in there, a lot of the crayfish were obviously in the margins, especially the little baby ones, which are easier for the eels to eat, which I think is why the eels were in close in. I mean, most of the eels that did get caught on there were fishing in the margins or quite close to the bank. Now there's no reason for them to be in the margins because there's no food source there. So trying to find one, I mean, it's even a lot harder than it would have been. It was hard enough anyway. Now it's
almost impossible.
Yeah,
it is almost impossible. And you mentioned a fish earlier that we've just got back off a shoot. We actually both went together, didn't we? On a fishing rod trip shoot to Scotland. Did a bit of grayling fishing. You mentioned grayling earlier, like when everything's frozen up and cold, that you've done a bit of grayling fishing. That's something totally different because it's like almost a game fish, even though it's not a game fish, is it?
I think they are. Yeah, they
Classed
are
as a
game
game
fish, but
fish.
it's got the adipose. Yeah.
There you go. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Didn't know if it
They
was
are,
or
they
wasn't.
are classed as a game fish because they live up. Yeah.
Because they catch them on a fly and you can catch them on trotting and maggots and stuff. What's your grayling fishing experience? I know you've had a few good uns.
Yeah, I've done quite a lot over the years. I mean, I used to go. I say whenever it was like freezing cold and there's not a lot else feeding, as long as the river's not in flood or chocolate coloured, you can go out and catch a few grayling as long as you've got a river near you or access to one where they live. So I've always fished for them, probably for about the last 15 years or more.
Lovely.
Not regularly. It's sort of thing I have 2 or 3 sessions each winter. Quite often with a couple of friends or fish down on the Frome quite a bit.
Lovely.
Down in Dorset. Yeah, sort of the Test and that in Hampshire.
Almost a bit of a social trip. Go out, a few where you get together.
It's nice. I mean, it's not like one of them things where you have to be there bang on dawn and they only feed for a short window. You can catch them through the days. You can sort of turn up, have a cup of coffee or whatever, have a chat, go and catch a few, meet back up for lunch, and
that sounds like
it's just a nice day out.
Yeah, that sounds a bit of me.
That's not.
It's pleasant.
200 nights for 2 bites. That sounds a bit more Matt Godfrey kind of fishing. That does.
Yeah, it's just fun, and it's sort of thing you can do with
They're a gorgeous fish, aren't they?
I was just going to say they are wicked fish as well.
Stunning.
I think they're brilliant.
Yeah,
beautiful looking, aren't they? Yeah, it's that
really,
fin
really
on
cool.
them as well. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
I like it, and the colours as well.
Like golden and greens and mottled.
Yeah.
What's your PB grayling, Gary? I've got to ask you.
3 pounds 7 ounces.
That's massive.
It wasn't going to be small, was it?
No.
Have you seen the theme for this?
Yeah. Catches a few big ones, doesn't it? £3.7.
Size of that.
Is that the fish?
That's it. Yeah.
That is gorgeous, isn't
You
it?
can see I'm quite happy with that one
That's
as well.
such
Yeah,
a cool
yeah.
fish.
But that was it was actually away from all the southern chalk streams. That's on the upper Severn.
It looks. This sounds crazy because it is what it is, but it does look like a grayling, only bigger, doesn't it?
They
It's
do,
massive.
Yeah, it was quite a thick sort of fish as well. That one. Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous photo as well, mate. Really nice. Look at colours on it.
Yeah, it was sort of just on dusk that one. It was literally one of the last casts of the day.
Was that on trotting tactics?
That was actually on a feeder.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'd never known people fish feeder for them.
Yeah, it's quite effective. I mean, sometimes when you're running a float through, I love fishing the float, but it's not always that effective. I've found times where they don't want a bait that's moving through.
Really
They'll
cool.
take something a bit more static. I mean, you'll fish a pool or a run on the float, catch nothing, have a chuck in there on the feeder and catch them. I mean, it's not the most traditional way of catching them, but it can be really effective.
Right.
And
Could
some
have
of
told me
those
this in Scotland other
should
week.
have done actually. Yeah. And some of those spots, you just can't fish them effectively with a float. There might be a little sort of slack or or a little eddy. You can sort of fish on the edge of it. With a float, you can't keep a bait there for long enough to fish it really effectively.
So you caught that one on a little maggot feeder?
Just a little maggot feeder, short hook link, just so because you don't want them swallowing it. So yeah, short hook link. You do tend to sort of hook them. Just quiver tip.
Brilliant. What's bite like?
It's quite a good bite, that one, from what I remember. It jumped. I remember hooking it and it jumping clean out the water when I hooked it, which is like, I can't remember. It's been on about a size 16 or 18 hook.
That's quite a twitchy moment, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Bet that your ass cheeks were squeezed together when that jumped out.
Especially when you've seen the size of it.
Yeah,
well,
big time.
If it landed on the hook link, it'd probably bust me. Yeah, so I was on, I think, 0.13.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's...
Do you think that even for them big fish like that in them sort of clear rivers, Gary, like, do you think fishing lighter and being a bit more delicate works for like a big grayling like that? I think it's effective.
I think it definitely makes a difference. Certainly you'll get days where you could chuck anything at them and they'll eat it. You could chuck a bit of corn on, I don't know, a size 10 hook and £5 line, they'd probably eat it some days. But on days where they are being a bit funny, like any species, just refining your tactics a bit, slightly lighter line, smaller hook. From your match fishing, it must make a huge difference, even just going down a hook size sometimes, or slightly lighter line, or...
Yeah, it does, definitely. 100%.
Yeah, difference between fishing one maggot or two maggots, things like that, it can make
And you apply that to your specimen fishing as well?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Really interesting. And what's... I can't remember what I asked you now. What's... That sort of fish, like grayling, you talk about them feeding in winter when it's freezing cold. Are they migratory, or can you not catch them in summer? Why is that conditions and that time of year best for them kind of fish?
I think, you could catch them all year round. I don't think they would go back very well in the summer. They're really delicate fish anyway. Even in the winter, you have to be really careful with them. They're a nightmare to hold for floaters, but you need to get them back quickly.
Right.
I don't like having them out the water for long.
Yeah.
And just holding them till they get their breath back. They are a species that can die very quickly. So if you're catching them in water that's quite low oxygen levels, it wouldn't do them much good.
For them.
Some of those Scottish rivers, they definitely catch them later in the year because the water's a lot colder up there. I know we were lucky when we went. It was like being up there in the summer.
Yeah, well, lovely other week, wasn't it? Really lucky.
But generally, though, it's colder up there, so you probably get away with it a bit more fishing later in the year for them.
And what's, like, we talked about eels being old fish when they get big. Like, what's the life cycle of a grayling like, say, compared to the eels, obviously, the really top end of the spectrum, live for a long time, grow bigger slowly. What's, say, like a grayling... To get to £3.7, that's the biggest grayling I've ever seen a picture of, by the way. It's ridiculous. Like, how long does it take them to get to that size?
I think, again, it varies on the river. I know those... I remember speaking to a river keeper down on the River Thames, down in Hampshire, and I think they've done tests or studies on some of the big grayling that have been caught, or the ones... when they die, they just turn up, you get them floating down the river, like a load of them. And they've tested them, and they were like 4 years old.
So they grow big quick.
They grow big very quickly.
That's cool.
And then you get a year class almost die out. I think some of those rivers, possibly up on the upper Severn there, probably a bit longer than that. And the same with the Scottish rivers. They probably grow a bit more slowly, but last a few more years. Maybe 7-8 years, potentially.
Right. So it's totally opposite to a specimen. I think that's really interesting. Totally different fish, totally different life cycle.
Those ones up on the Severn, we had literally, another friend had fished it the winter before and had some decent fish, nothing of that sort of size, but some good ones, like sort of decent twos. We had that year where we caught them. I had that 3.7, a mate had one similar size, and I know there was a couple of other threes off that stretch, and the average size was just ridiculous as well, what you were catching. And then the following winter, they were all gone.
And do you think they died off?
I think there was bad flooding as well that summer, so that would have wiped out some of them. But I think they were just old fish. It was just that year class, and there was nothing else sort of coming through, or very few coming through.
That's really interesting. Really, really interesting. I think that's quite I think what you've just talked about there, and the fact you can turn up with your rod, few maggots, go for a few hours. I think that'll inspire quite a few people to go and have a go for grayling this
great
winter.
Fun. Yeah, great species. And this,
proper cool. Out of the UK fish that we've talked about, this were my favourite fish as a kid. I used to go and target these more than I went match fishing and stuff, and it's pike.
Yeah.
Now, what sort of pike fishing experience you got, Gary? You ever had a stint at catching them and targeting them?
I used to do quite a bit of pike fishing in the winter. I mean, I was through my teens and sort of up to mid-20s, I was mainly sort of into carp fishing. But back then, we seemed to get colder winters than we do now.
Global warming.
It must be, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, lakes used to freeze up for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Or it'd be too cold to go and catch carp. So it just made sense to go pike fishing. I had some reasonable sort of waters around me. So I've always had a dabble for pike. Not catching big ones back then, up to sort of like 14, 15 pound.
Nice fish though.
Nice fish, yeah. I mean, round my way, although it's one of the few species we haven't got many big ones of around where I live. They're sort of big everything else, but finding big pike is sort of quite a challenge.
What do you need for big pike to exist, Gary? What are the key ingredients into creating a big pike, if you know what I mean?
Food source, mate. Food source and lack of pressure. Like angling pressure, I would say. And again, as I mentioned when we're talking about broadwater with the eels, all the cormorants on there, that's a big problem in that sort of part of the country where I live, sort of Colne Valley and all around that sort of London area. Lee Valley, similar problems. So you've not got much bait, not many bait fish for them to eat. So that, and you've got a lot of anglers around that area as well.
So that
and they don't like getting caught.
Pike don't.
No, I mean, because you're using treble hooks, you've only got to get some. I mean, there could be a big pike in the water. You've only got to get someone who doesn't know what they're doing, deep hook it, and that's probably the end. I mean, even if it goes back, they're probably not living very long afterwards. No.
Yeah. It's quite sad, really, isn't it? To think that,
Yeah, I'll definitely. I mean, with pike, I'd rather miss a bite than deep hook. I mean, I'll strike quite early when I'm pike fishing.
To make sure you do hook them around the edge of the
mouth. I mean, I know what I'm doing. If you do get one that happens to sort of sit there and not give you any indication, you can get the hooks out. But generally, I'd rather miss a bite than wait for it to swallow the thing completely and deep hook one.
For anyone listening, Gary, who might be inspired to do some pike fishing and stuff, for the sake of the fish, what advice would you give them? If someone wants to go pike fishing and they want to obviously make sure they look after the fish the best they can, what kind of things they got to think about? What advice would you give them?
Probably try and find someone you know that does a bit of it and go with them to at least see how to unhook them properly. I mean, you need to be confident handling them. I mean, people get cut by them or whatever when they're all right. You're going to off the gill rakers or whatever. You're going to get the odd cut, especially off jacks when you're unhooking them. But in general, I mean, you see people that almost don't want to touch them. I mean, that you need to be confident. If you're going to target them, you need to know what you're doing. Yeah,
you can't go pike fishing and not be willing to touch a pike, can you?
No, and you need to know how to unhook them. Which is easy once someone's shown you how to do it. It's very
that sounds
easy.
To me like the best advice, folks. If you are thinking about going and doing it, just go with someone. There'll be someone local tackle shop or someone you know.
Someone will help you on the lake you're fishing. I'm sure a lot of lakes, if there's someone pike fishing there, they'll show you. If they've just caught one when you're walking around, they'll show you. You can see what they're doing. I mean, having the right gear as well. I mean, obviously an unhooking mat these days is important, but just as important, probably more important than that, is having things like forceps and like cutters. So if you do need to, so you can actually get the hooks out. It's no good putting one on a great big soft mat and then not being able to get the hook out.
Bit of dentistry equipment.
Pretty much.
Kit. Yeah. That's what it is, though, isn't it? Forceps and pliers and all that side of things. And what about actually catching them? Like, are pike a difficult fish to catch?
They can be really easy at times. I mean, there's sort of fish that you can hook 2 or 3 times. I mean, if you hook one and loot, that's why I'm not so worried a lot of the time about striking a bit early. Because quite often, if you miss a bite, you can put a bait back out and they'll pick it up. No, I'm not saying every day they'll do it, but a lot of days they'll eat it again.
Same fish?
Yeah, if they're hungry. I mean, even when you land them, I've caught the same pike a couple of times in a day before.
Really?
Yeah, I'll definitely. Yeah, if they got.
That's crackers.
Yeah,
that is crackers.
Because they're predatory. When they're on the feed, they'll they just want to eat.
Yeah.
Just natural instinct. If there's something I don't know, a live bait swimming past, or even a dead bait on the bottom. If they're hungry and they want to eat, they'll eat. And
That's
just keep on
interesting.
eating. Yeah.
It's almost the predatory instinct in them overpowers the fact they've just been caught. And
I mean, I think with lure fishing, I mean, I don't do a lot of lure fishing for pike, but I mean, some of the lures they're catching on, they probably know there's something wrong with it, but they just can't. If you run a lure past its nose enough times, eventually you'll get a reaction.
do you think sometimes you can just wind one up and
I think you can, yeah.
trigger it into...
Definitely,
Imagine that, Toby, sat there in your weed bed, chilling out, just sat in your weed bed, chilling out. And Gary's there with this big orange lure.
Just keeps going past
winding it past my face.
Not falling for it.
Yeah.
Not falling for it.
Yeah, and eventually, just instinct takes over and they'll hit it, even if they know there's something wrong with it, I think. Yeah.
So not notoriously hard to catch, but venues that don't get pressured by anglers and have got a really good food source. They're the key ingredients for catching big pike.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fishing on a big lake, obviously finding the areas where the pike are in. I memean, I do quite a lot of feature finding. I'll take a marker rod if I'm pike fishing. I wouldn't go without one certainly on a gravel pit, because all those features, the pike are using them to ambush prey fish, or you're trying to find where the prey fish are, and the pike are never going to be that far away. So there's quite a lot of sort of watercraft.
So what you're
comes
talking
into
like
it.
drop-offs or
Yeah,
bars
drop-offs,
or
bars, anything like that. Yeah.
under the water kind of things.
I mean, drop-offs are particularly good. I mean, they can sit on the edge of a drop-off, and anything coming past, they can just nail it. And weed beds, and like you were saying about it, just pike sat in a weed bed and stuff coming past.
That's the old traditional vision of a pike that you see in your head, innit? It's sat in its little hole in the weed, waiting for a little roach to swim past.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And what's you'll never talk about your big fish. I always have to egg it out of you. What's your biggest ever pike, gal?
32.5 pounds.
Never caught a big one?
No, nothing that big. No,
didn't fancy a big one in that species.
That's it.
Just 32.5 pound toe.
Oh, dear, is it that one?
That was it. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You are right. It looks like that crocodile from the Nile, just without the legs.
Just ain't got that. Yeah.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. That is ridiculous. I used to absolutely love pike fishing.
That is ridiculous. Look at
amazing.
Look at the belly on that thing.
It looks bigger than £30. Do you know what I always think? A big pike is the most impressive fish because they're so long.
Yeah, so impressive. Yeah, for their size. I mean, I know in the photo it is, but on the bank, that was just ridiculous when that came up in the dark.
Oh,
it is like a scary. Like if you were, I don't know, swimming in the water and that swam past you, you would brick it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, there's all...
I'd give you a shot.
There's all like old rumours, isn't there, that when people have been sat dangling the feet in water, a pike's had a snap at it.
Oh, mate, well, that is a snap at it.
Sort of,
You're losing a couple of toes if that does.
Yeah. You wouldn't let your little roo swim about in a lake, would you, if you knew that were there?
No, definitely not.
She'd be a toothpick for that thing, I reckon.
You get nailed by that.
There's a load of rumours about them eating dogs and stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, if you read some of the old books.
Yeah, little dogs and...
Yeah.
I tell you what, I can remember once, I've got a little pike story for you, Toe.
Go on then.
I remember once when we were fishing on canal, you know when pole pots first come out, we started using pole pots. I remember I was next to this kid called Kyle. We were only kids. And he was shipping his bait out, and we were only little, couldn't hold the pole up. So he was resting his pot on the surface, shipping it across the surface, floating it, and this pike kept coming and attacking his pot with his bait in, and he wouldn't leave it alone. Like he'd lift it up out of water. As soon as he put it back on the surface, it'd come back up, try and eat it. Never seen out like it.
Can't do your pole much good.
Can it?
Bitten by a pike.
No. Crackers, I always remember it. What did you catch that one on, Gary?
That was on half a mackerel.
Do you think dead bait's better than live bait for big uns? Or?
I think for big fish, I've had a lot more of my big fish on dead baits. I mean, quite often I'll sort of that was caught pre-baiting as well. It was a spot. That was actually on Fort Park Lake. In amongst the theme park. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. There's 3 lakes there all joined together. And we got a friend of mine. He worked for Fort Park and actually got permission to have a syndicate. We only had it for a year. But yeah, we got to fish it for a year.
Is that the same lake that you walk over the bridge to go into the park?
That's it.
Is it that one?
It's that one. Yeah.
Wow.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
When you're on your roller coaster,
That's it.
there's a 32-pound pike swimming about down
As
there.
you walk through over that bridge,
You go over
sort
the
of,
bridge, didn't you?
to your right at the far end of that
Yeah,
lake. It was like there was like a cut through between two lakes, and it was caught. I was just pre-baiting that area. There was a lot of roach in the area as well, but I just wanted to get them eating. Sort of give them
Who'd
some
have
free
known
dead
some
baits
monsters at Thorpe Park like that.
It's crackers, isn't
Yeah,
it?
isn't
You could have the pike ride.
Where's Big Perch Sea? You know where Thunder River was?
What's Thunder River? Is that one at
That
rides?
water ride.
Yeah.
There's a lake. There's a lake where you queue up there.
That's it.
That did perch to over £4. That lake.
Wow.
But again, I mean, we got to have a go on there a couple of times in the winter when the park was shut. But yeah, I've not been there for years. But it's really good fishing there.
Absolutely, man. But that sums up what you said at the start of pike conversation, the neglect, and they thrive on that.
Oh, they do, yeah. Yeah, if they're not fished for, just left alone.
Yeah. Will you do some more pike fishing?
If I can find the right water, it's so hard trying to find waters. I mean, obviously you've got a lot of the trout reservoirs. I mean, I've not really done a lot on those because I just love fishing gravel pits. And being out, I mean, a lot of my big pike have been caught at night as well. So
That's interesting because there's a load of rumours. I remember as a kid reading books saying, "Oh, pike don't feed at night."
they do, yeah, they certainly do. Yeah. I think I've had more 20-pounders at night than during the daytime, and proper middle of the night as well.
Right.
Not just sort of just into dusk or whatever. Especially on dead baits on the gravel pits, it's can be really effective.
I suppose they've got that many. You know, when you look at, have you ever looked at a pike up close, Tobe?
Yeah, I've only ever caught one, to be fair. I've not seen one for a long time.
What always amazes me, even a little jack, you know, when you get it and you look at its head,
Yep.
it's just full of sensors in it.
Yeah,
like
it's all the little
holes and lines and little. They're like a radar machine, aren't they? You must be able to sense.
Yeah. And any sort of smell in the water, sort of taste in the water, I suppose. Yeah, rather than smell as such like we smell. But yeah, they do seem very good at homing in on baits. I say even dead baits at night. There,
Proper,
fascinating.
well designed. You mentioned perch, Gary. Obviously, them ones at Thorpe Park.
Yep.
What big perch fishing experience have you got?
I've not caught any really, really big ones. I mean, I've had them to bang on £4, my biggest.
That's honest, isn't it? £4.
Mate actually weighed it for me. I'd have gone $3.15 if I'd been buying it.
Would you really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it wasn't a foot. I hate things that just right on £4. I mean, it all balances out. I mean, I've caught things at $3.15. I've caught other species. So it's.
That's cool. I can't believe it was £4.
I want a proper four though, one that's actually like over.
Is that him?
Yeah, that's
a cracking fish.
It's from a commercial lake. That was actually
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Big old perch.
He's massive. Look at belly on him.
Are
Are you holding its fin up there, or is he doing that on his own?
No, I'm holding him up there. Yeah, I've got my hand behind there. Yeah.
Aren't they gorgeous fish, them?
They
What were he
nice. That was on worm. That one.
on? What, a lobworm?
Yeah, just a lobworm, just feeding sort of chop worm, red maggot.
And how did you catch it? Was it on the bottom or?
That was ledgering that one. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, just like a just little paternoster sort of fishing close in. I remember it's horrible weather. I remember that day. It looks all right in the pictures there, but I remember, it looks nice there. But I think we'd had like sleet, like hailstones, or horrible weather. So
Are they a winter fish, Gary? Big perch like pike or?
You'll catch again. You can catch perch all year round. I think people tend to fish from winter because they start getting bigger then, and probably because there's less other things to fish for. Summertime, there's so many other species to go and have a go for. I mean, this time of year is really good for perch.
Is it?
Before they spawn. I mean, they're big, and there's not a lot else to go and fish for at the minute. Rivers have shut. Things like Tench and even bream aren't really waking up properly yet. So it's good time to go and fish for perch.
Right. Are you going to go and have a go next few weeks, do you reckon? Or
I might do, although I'm sort of looking at bream fishing potentially. So there's a water I want to start having a look at before it really gets just to sort of learn a bit about the place before we sort of get into the time where you're catching them. But
right.
I've done quite a bit over the years for the perch, on rivers and canals. I've caught them out rivers, canals, lakes.
I always think they look nicer out of a natural venue than a commercial. They're a bit more vibrant, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, that one we had the picture up of. I mean, that commercial, it wasn't one that was stuffed full of fish, so it was still fairly clear water, and they've got their markings and colours. I mean, some of the other places I've fished, they're just so washed out.
I like a nice river perch, mate. I like a nice river perch. Now, one of the final fish I want to ask you about is mainly because of a brace of them that you told me that you caught, and that's crucian carp.
Yes, that was years ago.
That's something you don't hear about crucians anymore.
No, they're starting to make a bit of a comeback. I mean, they were almost dying out's the wrong word, but there weren't many waters with them in. I mean, they're one of those species that have always been around. I remember catching them when I was a kid. There's quite a few waters had crucians in. I think the problem is when sort of carp, everyone went carp mad. As soon as you start putting carp in a lake that's got crucians, the crucians aren't going to be there for long. You end up with hybridisation, or they just push the crucians out and they'll just decline. I don't think they do very well with a lot of other species.
Does that happen really easy with a crucian? They will breed with king carp, and you'll get some. Yeah,
you'll get the crosses with them or with brown goldfish, that's the other problem. I mean, a lot of clubs, they didn't really know. They're not experts in fish identification, and they've. I think brown goldfish used to be half the price, third of the price of crucians. To a fish farmer. So if you got someone who was a bit less scrupulous, they'd sell brown goldfish as crucians, and you're getting waters that stop. There's lots of waters out there with brown goldfish, F1s, whatever in.
I suppose an F1 that we have in match fishing. Is it crucian?
I think that's crucian and a carp. Yeah. I'm sure that. Yeah. So there's certainly was it brown goldfish and a carp? I can't remember. Something like that. But it's definitely a hybrid.
Yeah, they seem to be quite a breedable fish, crucians. There's a little lake next to where my mum and dad live, and they got in there when it were a trout fishery, just on like duck's feet, and there were loads of them, like brown goldfish, crucian-y things.
Yeah. I mean, true. I mean, there's quite a few people now that are sort of interested in crucians, and I think there's lakes that have been stocked with them specifically to try and make sure they don't die out and we don't lose them. So there are more waters now. I mean, obviously you've got Godalming Angling Club have done a lot with Marsh Farm.
I've heard of Marsh Farm a lot. I'm sure you've told me about that.
That's sort of day ticket, and they've got one of their club lakes next to it, Johnson's, which is where the British record's from.
And how big's that, Gary? British record?
I think 413, something like that.
Big crucian.
It's very big. Yeah, it's done the British. Probably the last 20 British records or whatever 10 British records have been from Johnson's. It's just gradually been going up and up and up. And if you want to go and catch chance of a £4 one, catch sort of £3 plus crucians, it's sort of the place to go.
Right.
They've done really well in there.
And what's your crucian experience? Obviously, you talked about that. Is that brace of them on the screen now? Look at them.
Yeah,
they're right dinner plates.
They were out of a big gravel pit. Well, I say big, about 14, 15 acre gravel pit that had very low head of crucians in them. But yeah, I mean, they all seem to be big. If you caught a crucian out there, it was big. There weren't many, and you didn't catch very often.
Aren't they a weird looking fish when you actually look at them?
Yeah. I mean, they've got that big. I mean, those are very sort of traditional ones. A big high back. I mean, that lake actually held. It was Eversley Lake down at Yateley. It actually held the record for a few years. I think £4.8. I mean, those two were actually spawned out when I caught them. You can see it.
What are they, Gal?
£3 15 ounce, £3 14 ounce.
Amazing fish. That's a special two fish to have on the bank at the same time. How did that happen? How did you end up with two on bank like that?
I mean, I was retaining them because you catch them at night. So got like they call it like Queensford retention. It's almost like a mini keep net that's made out of carp sack material. So you can stake it out, and they quite happily just swim about in it in the margins. But they're caught fishing about 30, 40 yards out. It's very weedy lakes. You're sort of fishing over the weed on the gravel just behind the weeds.
Right.
That was on a bit of plastic corn. Sort of bulk, you're fishing bulk rig style. It just wasn't practical on that lake to float fish because of the range you're fishing at.
You can't fish a float for crucians at 40 yards.
And where bites are so hard to come by. I mean, I didn't fish it often because it was a private lake. I just used to get. It was owned by Cemex. It was sort of one of their stock lakes. But I used to get the odd guest session on there.
Right.
Back then. Yeah.
Cracking fish.
I think that was the only session I actually caught crucians.
Really?
Yeah.
You talk about bolt rigs and stuff. Obviously, I always associate and remember crucian fishing with like a bit of peacock quill and fishing next to the lilies with a float and stuff. Have you done much of that style fishing for them?
I've done a lot of that as well. Even I quite often fish like a 15-foot rod pin and pole float rigs for them.
Ah, cool.
Which is really nice, yeah, because they're so sensitive. It's almost like pole fishing, but with running line.
Yeah, so if you hook a big one, you can let it run a bit.
You just got that little bit more control than just relying on the elastic going in and out. And if you're not fishing far out, it's perfect. But I mean, it can be, as you probably know, it can be really frustrating. I mean, you can have them fizzing all around your float. And
what do you think they're doing underwater when that's happening?
I don't. They must be picking the bait up at times and getting away with it.
They're known for it, aren't they? Little tiny indications, tiny bobs.
Little, like the float, the tip will just move. Like you're getting them little.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it's obviously where they're touching the line, but it's not all when they're. I mean, I've had it before where they're fizzing all on over your spot, all around your float. You can sit there and not catch one like all morning like that. And then the sun will get up and they'll sort of stop because I mean they're one of them species you often catch early morning. Especially those estate lakes. Once you get to sort of like 9-10 o'clock in the summer, it's over. You're not catching them in the middle of the day.
Right. Beautiful fish. Are they indigenous to the UK? Are they meant to be here?
Oh yeah, they're really yeah. I think they've been here for like forever, basically. Yeah,
Love it. I want to go crucian fishing now as well, Toby. Stick that one on the list.
It's on the list,
definitely.
Mate, don't worry.
Has anyone ever frowned upon using like a bolt rig? Like any of the traditionalists, would they think, oh, that's not proper crucian fishing using a bolt rig? Or
people definitely will do. I mean, some people will do. Same with barbel fishing using buzzers, grayling fishing if you're fishing feeders. I've always looked at it. I mean, you just fish how you enjoy fishing. I mean, a lot of people might. I mean, you could go back to sort of some people could argue that you should fly fish for everything, like artificials. That there's more skill in that.
How much other fishing is there compared to that? There's loads, isn't there?
There's loads. I mean, it's when carbon rods first came out. There are people that probably thought that was cheating because you're not using split cane anymore. Or
fishing evolves.
Nylon came out. You stopped using cat gutters. Baits. It's all things evolve eventually.
Of course they do.
I mean, you just got to fish how you enjoy fishing, I think. I mean, even with things like carp fishing, I mean, I wouldn't enjoy fishing with bait boats particularly. I know they're effective, but to me, it's just not how I want to fish. I've got no problem if people want to use one. And I think it's the same with any of your fishing. You just do, as long as you're not messing it up for anybody else, disturbing their fishing, why do they really care how someone else is?
No, as long as you're not hurting fish and you're fishing how you think's effective and good to catch a big fish.
That's the way I've always looked at it.
Brilliant. I want to ask you, before we get this wrapped up, right, this is I want you to give me like dead honest answer here, because I almost want to watch I'm hooked on your fishing anyway. I'm really interested in it. I'm sure a lot of other people are as well. But I want to see how you answer this question, and I want to watch and see what you do over the next however long. But you've done so much fishing in so many different places. I'm having you back on podcast because I want to talk about America. I want to talk about your career in fishing. Obviously, you had a massive journalistic career, and if we did that now, we'd be here all night, so we won't be getting the Nando's. So I definitely want you back on, Gal, to talk about all that. But you've done that much fishing, caught that many big fish. What is left to do for Gary Newman? What are your fishing targets going forward? Is there anything you still want to catch?
Overseas, there's loads.
Really?
Still species. Goliath tigerfish, which hopefully I'll be going and doing on the Congo River later this year.
Wow.
Hopefully, all being well.
Will you come back in and tell us after that trip?
No, he is coming back in and to tell us about
Goliath
that trip.
tigers.
If I make it back from there,
that'll be it.
But no, it depends where the trip goes. I mean, we're trying to plan a trip for the last couple of years, and then obviously with COVID, it messed up plans for that. It's quite an unstable country as well, so anything could happen between now and when I go. What else got? Tigris Barbel. That's
What are they?
They're a massive thing. They've caught them to
sound like
around
aliens.
£200. Yeah, they're huge.
£200.
Yeah, that's sort of certainly £150 plus.
Do they look like a barbel at all?
They look like a barbel. They're a bit like a chamizo, you know, the Spanish
chamizo
ones?
barbel,
They're like
yeah.
a massive version. You get them. They're in Iran. Is probably the safest country to go and catch them at the minute. I mean, they had some huge ones in Iraq as well.
Did they?
Yeah, some of the American soldiers were catching them during the Iraq War.
How interesting is that?
Yeah, they live in the Tigris River, which sort of ran through Tikrit, which was, I think, Saddam Hussein's palace there. There were some of the soldiers that were stationed there, the American soldiers. They were catching some huge ones.
Amazing.
They're in Syria as well, which
That's
obviously,
where they get them?
obviously at the moment you can't really go. But Iran's really good option. It's just when you can get a visa that's it's a bit awkward where you can't get a visa at the moment. But as soon as you can, that'll be on the list.
I'm suppose that's quite dangerous, like with all the stuff that goes off in them countries or has done. Like I'd be genuinely, I'd be scared.
Yeah, I'd be thinking twice about going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Iran's actually really safe. It's just the political situation with the UK that's a problem. The actual place itself. I mean, compared to a lot of the countries around it, Iran's actually a very safe country anyway. It's just, obviously, the British and the Iranians haven't been getting on that great the last few years. But if that situation resolves, which hopefully it will, hopefully travel will sort of open up again. Yeah,
love to hear about that trip.
Yeah,
I really would. That's amazed me. That, you know, because you know when you think about those countries, Iraq, Iran, Syria, that area, you don't think fishing.
No,
do you?
I was just going to say that. They're not like your normal fishing countries.
No, you've
are
got
they?
loads. I mean, you've got big carp in Iran.
Right.
There's some good carp lakes out there. It's just difficult.
You wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
No, that's really surprised me, that. And I would make sure, please, when you go on these trips, even if we just do a 30-minute special.
Yeah,
Gav's going to get his own podcast
Yeah.
show, isn't he? Like, he's
do
going to
that.
recur in episodes.
Come in.
I've definitely, always, no. I'm always
Anything
happy to
else?
come in and
What about then? So to rephrase my question, what about UK-wise? Anything left in the UK for you?
Mainly, I mean, just I like trying to up my PBs or just fishing places I enjoy fishing. There's still loads of fish. There's so much fishing out there. Whether it's going to a river that I've not fished before and trying to catch a £5 or £6 chub out of there, or a double figure barbel out of another river that I've never fished before. It's all sort of relative, isn't it, to what's in the venue where you're fishing.
Of course it is.
But,
you just strike me like you just love fishing.
I just love going fishing. Yeah, I'm
I
always
can
going to
tell.
enjoy it. Yeah.
It's infectious, isn't it,
Yeah,
Toe?
it is.
I want to come fishing with you. Like, it's really, it's really infectious.
You're always welcome.
Thank you, mate. I've not really had to tweak these questions much, but at the end of every podcast we do some little quick fire questions.
Okay.
So this will be interesting because we mainly have.
To be fair, this is going to be brilliant.
Yeah.
For Gal,
I thought it'd be
actually.
terrible.
We have some
you'd be
some
fine.
like a lot of match anglers on and stuff, but all that background here, I'll be interested to hear your answers to these because they're pretty much the same questions what I ask them all. So quick fire questions.
Yep.
One item in your tackle box, Gal, you couldn't live without.
I would say rubber baits.
Rubber baits.
Yeah.
Not had that one before, have we?
That's a new one.
Why? A lot of success on him?
I'm really confident in them, and they're so versatile as well. I mean, I've got pots with like selection that you got sort of maggots, casters, corn, and they're just so versatile. You can't catch anything on them, but there's a lot of species that you can go and catch using them.
That's
I've caught chub
interesting.
on. I've caught chub on rubber maggots.
I've never put a rubber bait on, you know.
Haven't you?
No, but I will be doing
I bet
that.
you will now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever caught a barbel on a rubber bait?
I haven't. Yes, I have. Yeah, sorry, maggot. Yeah, well, I'm maggot fishing. Yeah,
Rubber
because you got
maggots.
minnows and stuff. Anywhere where there's minnows, you've got a hook bait on.
Cracking. Bit of rubber baits. If you could only fish one venue, Gal, for the rest of your life, where would it be?
This is the one I'm looking forward
We're
to.
talking UK. It'd be the River Thames.
Lovely. Like it. That's back to the start of the
do you know
podcast.
what, Gal? Just for you, you're allowed 2 answers because you fished in so many places.
If it was worldwide, I'd say probably the Amazon River.
Right.
Just because there's so many different species and it's so big as well. It runs through quite a few of the South American countries. So you've
Got to have your back to talk about the Amazon.
We could have an Amazon special.
You could, couldn't you? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be buzzing for that.
I've never actually fished the Amazon itself.
Have you not?
No, I've fished that area, Amazon region, on other rivers.
So I'd give him a couple of weeks.
But I've
in
not
the
actually
bin.
fished. Yeah, out there and have a go. But I've not fished the Amazon River itself, so it's somewhere I'd love to go and have a go on.
Will you do that in the future?
I probably will do at some point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it. This is an interesting one for you. Who's the best angler that you've ever fished with?
Oh, that's a really difficult question because so many good anglers I've fished with. Probably a friend of mine, a guy called Neil Stephen.
Neil Stephen.
Yeah, he's one of them people that just seems to be successful at whatever he fishes for. He's got a family as well, not loads of time to spend, but he just catch, and he seems to have a knack of catching huge fish.
Do you think it's natural for him? Do you think he has got the natural knack?
He's definitely got a natural knack, and the big fish just seem to like him. He could go on somewhere and he'll catch the biggest one.
Really?
Yeah, he's one of them people you'd put money on if someone's going to... Yeah, I mean, he did it. Even carp fishing and things like that. Went carp fishing, caught the first £60 one out of Wellington Country Park.
No.
Yeah, so he's just one of them people.
Right.
And he can pick up a fly rod and, yeah, he's just sort of good at whatever he tries to...
Yeah,
sort of
annoyingly good. Annoyingly good.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you reckon he'd be interested in coming on a podcast?
He might well be. Yeah.
Could be a good one.
Could
Someone
be a good one.
different. And
yeah, definitely.
good stories of big fish.
Yeah.
If there's one thing you could change about fishing, Gaz, what would it be?
Probably all the moaning on social media.
That's
good
a
one, that.
great answer.
It drives me mad. Sometimes you're reading it and you think, why don't people just go fishing rather than complaining about what everybody else is doing?
I like that. Good answer.
Solid answer. I've got to agree with you, mate, on that as well.
Yeah,
I'm right in that ballpark of not enjoying that.
No, it's just annoying, isn't it, when you see some of these? But yeah.
Great answer. And a final one, and I don't even think we need to ask this because you have done this in the best way you can on this podcast.
Absolutely.
I'm sat here wanting to go all over the world fishing. But if you had to give someone who's never been fishing before some inspiration to go and have a go at it, what would you say to them?
It's all about it's not just about catching the fish, it's everything that comes with it, sort of being outside, nature, sort of people you meet on the bank, places you go, it's everything. So it's sort of hard to put into words really why you go, isn't it? But yeah, to me it's more than just the fish, it's sort of all the other things and sort of just being outside with nature really.
Like it.
Watch this podcast. That'd be my answer now.
Yeah, what's going in this podcast? Yeah, some amazing places. And final question: have you got a gift for us, Gary Newman?
Yes.
What's this? Oh, it's a little brown envelope.
Yeah. I didn't wrap it. It came like that.
Right.
Wouldn't have been as neat as that.
This is interesting.
Talk
I've
us
never
through it, Matt.
I've never had to unwrap a gift before on the podcast.
Gary setting the level now for future guests.
Yeah.
Carefully, hand wrapped.
Quest for this is the book you mentioned.
It is, yes.
Wow, where the hell have you got that from?
They still sell them.
That is unreal.
Hold it up for us, mate.
So that is the book that you read that
When I was a
inspired you to
kid,
go Mahseer
yeah,
fishing.
one of the books that,
What a fantastic gift! How good is that, Toe?
That's a brilliant gift. That
is
we'll be having a
mega.
look at that.
By Trans World Fishing Team.
Yeah,
So who is it then?
I think it's from the 70s. I think that was. It's basically some anglers that they put. I think it was. Yeah, it might have been Abu or someone like that sponsored them to go out there.
Can we read this then? Me and Tobe can.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to take this home, Tobe? But we've got to leave it in here.
No, definitely have a read of it. Hopefully, it will inspire you to go and have a go.
Look at that angry elephant crossing the river. That's literally like
That's
this is
mad. Yeah.
No wonder this inspired you, mate. That is a fantastic gift. Thank you very, very much. Have you got your own copy of this as well at home?
I've got my own copy of that one, yeah.
The original one that was the inspiration to go?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, actually, no, because that was a library book, but I bought one in latter years. And
Right. Can you do a little signature in here for us before you go? Is that all right? I'll get you to do that.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Mate, that has been an absolute blast. I've loved it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
been
having you back
brilliant,
on.
mate.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Put it there.
Yeah. Cheers.
If everyone at home's enjoyed it as much as we have, it's a winner. I say it every time, but that was incredible. Thank you, Gary Newman.
Cheers, Matt. That's great.
The Fishing Gurus Podcast.